Good evening everyone, at 6 p.m, and I declare this agenda forum open. I welcome all those in the gallery tonight, councillors, staff and anyone viewing online. And I'd like to start by saying the City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and their descendants. Item 2, the disclaimer. Agenda forums are specifically for agenda items which are to be considered by Council at the next ordinary meeting of Council. Agenda forums are not decision-making forums. They provide an opportunity for councillors to be equally informed and seek additional information on matters prior to the presentation of such matters to the next ordinary meeting of Council for formal consideration and decision. Please note this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the Council's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time or deputation time, it is assumed you've given your consent for the audio to be recorded. Please keep all comments respectful to the Council and other members of the community, and visual images of the public will not be captured. Moving on to item 3, attendance and apologies. I've got attendance apologies from the CEO. He's on a leave of absence. Councillor Prodovnik and Councillor Jones are attending via Zoom, and Councillor Howlett is running late due to work commitments, and she hopes to be here by 7 p.m. Are there any other that you're aware of, Mr. Bishop? No? Thank you. Item 4, declarations of financial proximity interest or interests affecting impartiality. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 4 declarations. The first one is from yourself, Councillor David Lucas. Item 5.6, temporary closure of Drumpelia Drive. Impartiality interest. I may have met with Melconnex employer or employee to discuss volunteer work at Rainbow Park in Bennett Springs. Declaration from Councillor Rod Henderson on item C 1.3. The declaration is a direct financial nature of interest. The reason is proposed road traverses land adjacent to my land. I have a disclosure from Councillor Mel Congerton on item 4.5, which relates to the SAT reconsideration. The interest is impartiality, and the reason given is Burgess Group has acted on behalf of one of my companies. And finally, disclosure from Executive Manager Jim Coton, item 5.6, proposed temporary closure of a portion of Drumpelia Drive. The interest is impartiality. The reason is the applicant has approached the city about providing free labour on an upgrade of a city park. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and just for completeness, there are 2 listed. If you can complete the form, thank you, Councillor Catalano. Just for
sorry, Mr. Mayor, we have one other.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones, item 4.1.
I have an impartiality C3.1 as I'm on the Swan Chairing Committee.
Thank you. If you make sure you get that form in by next week's meeting, thank you, Councillor Jones. And just for completeness, there's 2 others listed in the run sheet, councillors, which I'll read out so everyone's aware. Councillor Richardson declared an impartiality interest in item 13.13 as Councillor Johnson's assessment of elected members' development application, as she has recently had a development application considered by Council. And Councillor Bowman declared an impartiality interest in item 4.3, ministerial direction to initiate proposed amendment number 191, local planning scheme number 17, insert telecommunications infrastructure as an additional use in Vidello Drive, the Vines, as he lives in the Vines and close to the lot in question. Are there any other councillors?
I've also got one on the 3.1 I omitted. Thank you.
Thank you. If you complete the form, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did put it on a form. It's indirect financial interest in item 4.2, as one of my children has earned pocket money from the applicant.
Thank you. We'll make sure we get that followed up. And if you hand yours in, thank you, Councillor Congren. Are there any other councillors? declaring interest.
Actually, there's another one. That's 4.4, because there's been a written deputation made by the Blackout Catchment Group that I'm a member of.
Thank you. If you can complete the form. Thank you, Councillor Catalano. Okay, moving on to item 5, public question time. Questions relating reports contained in the agenda, and 5.1, questions of which due notice has been given. There were nil. 5.2, questions without due notice. Is anyone in the public gallery wishing to ask a question on an agenda item? Yes, sir. If you can come to the microphone, push the speak button and ask your question. Thank you. Oh, is that Mr. Irwin, is it?
It is, Mr.
Very
Mayor.
hard to identify people.
My question relates to item 7.9 of the annual meeting of electors, motion 13, the north-south arterial industrial freight route through Midland and Lloyd Street. My question is, will the proposed grade separation at Morrison Road, West End, for which Ken Wyatt has promised $100 million, lead to the closure of Woodbridge Primary School?
I'll have to take that on notice, Mr. Irwin. I only became aware of that today through an email from another councillor, which I responded to all councillors with. Until I was advised today, I was unaware of that, so I'll take that on notice and we'll get back to you.
Can I make a secondary question on that item?
Or you can ask another question.
Another
yes.
question. Will the council, in approving a second bridge at Amherst Road, following on this Morrison Road overpass, will that secondary bridge be considered more environmentally consciously than the recent Lloyd Street Bridge has been considered?
Well, once again, I'll take it on notice because, to be honest, I don't know about a second bridge going into Amherst Road, and we'll get the information and write back to you.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Mayor.
Item 6, reports and motions of which previous notice has been given, and 6.1, additional information from officers. It's in Part A, councillors. And item 12, you'll note there's some additions to the confirmations of the minutes on page 13, some corrections. So they'll be noted in next week's council meeting for adoption as part of the minutes. And it takes us to Part B, item 6.3, budget adjustments 2021 to 22, April 2022 on page 816. And you'll note there's some adjustments there to be made in your agenda for consideration at next week's meeting. Item 6.2 is deputations. In accordance with the current procedures of public participations at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations and submissions of written deputations were required by 3 p.m. yesterday, Tuesday the 29th of March. All written deputations received by 5 p.m. Yesterday were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening, and additional deputation requests have been approved and are included. All written deputations received prior to the agenda forum have been distributed this evening. And Part A, item 13.7, Kings Meadow Foreshore Guildford, is on page 15 of the agenda. We have our first in-person deputation from Mr Andrew Day, speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Mr Day. You have 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mayor Lucas and councillors.
Sorry, just before you start, Councillor Congdon.
Can I please ask that everyone remains with their mask, stays on their face and over their nose, even if you have to go to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you. When you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes.
Sure. My name's Andrew Day and I object to the staff recommendations in relation to Kings Meadow Foreshore. Firstly, there was very little community consultation. Despite repeated requests, residents have not been consulted about the options or afforded an opportunity to provide feedback on the options presented in the paper, which was only published a few days ago. We were in fact denied the opportunity to attend the site visit recently. It does call into question the motivations of officers. Fundamentally, under the Local Government Act, the city must manage its affairs in the interests of ratepayers in its district. How is option 3 in the interests of the ratepayers, is my question. The timing of this move, this has already been dragging on for a long time. Another month will not make any difference to the city or Kings Meadow Oval, but it will provide an opportunity for local residents to understand the options and provide their views. A second point, in my opinion, the preference for option 2 over option 3 has not been substantiated in the officer's report. There does not seem to be any clear rationale for choosing option 2 over option 3. What are the pros and cons of each? Councillors should insist on more detail and a more fulsome and balanced assessment. Option 2 would seem to prohibit future access to the river, which is without justification and poses a serious adverse impact on the amenities of residents and visitors alike. It contemplates the need to relocate the existing amenities, such as they are, to a different location, but that is also in serious doubt, as the city does not control any other suitable land in the vicinity according to the officer's report. Could this mean the whole area is deprived of any amenities and fenced off? Where is the consideration on these impacts? My third point, option 3 presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to restore this important location, the confluence of two rivers, and to create a fitting destination for residents and visitors to enjoy and interact with the river. Consider the investment at Woodbridge Park and the use that precinct gets. Not that I am suggesting such a large investment. And consider also the modest investment at Fish Market Reserve, and note that these modest improvements at least facilitate the safe use and enjoyment of the river by locals and visitors. That is all we are seeking. Fourth point is that the approvals have already been obtained for option 3, so no apparent impediment there. The fifth point, we accept the forecast capital budget for option 3 is slightly higher than option 2, but not by much, and query whether the capital budget for option 2 reflects a fulsome assessment of future costs, or whether these are likely to exceed option 3 once further investigations are carried out. Point 6. Has a value for money assessment been undertaken on these options? As ratepayers, we are also entitled to insist upon this from the city. And my final point, there are serious ongoing concerns about antisocial behaviour and hoon activity at Kings Meadow Oval. This is well known to the city and other authorities. It's partly due to the fact that very few people can use the park and river given the current poor conditions and fencing, and so very few locals go there. The city has an obligation to address these concerns, which are more likely to be satisfactorily addressed with option 3. With more people encouraged to visit at all times of the day and appropriate improvements made to physically prevent hoon behaviour and antisocial behaviour and hoon activities more likely to be deterred. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe you also wish to make a deputation on item 5.8.
That's correct.
Whilst you're at the microphone, I'll allow that. Councillors, this is in response to a petition on modifications to Alina Street in Guildford. It's on page 767. Once you start speaking, you have up to 5 minutes again. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, can we take questions on this item first?
Yes, sorry, I was looking at my highlighted bit about the second deputation. You have a question, Councillor Johnson?
I do got a question for Mr Day. Mr Day, are you familiar with the history of this, the plans for this area?
I believe that there was consultation in 2017, is that correct? That's actually prior to when we moved to the area, so I wasn't privy to that consultation at that point in time. Okay. I've been in the area for just under 5 years now, so yeah, that happened just before I arrived.
Yeah, so just looking at the drawings in here, there's several drawings, councillors, from about page 27 that are dated from May 2017. So you would not have seen those? Then?
No.
Probably before your time.
That was just before we moved.
Do you think your neighbours have had the chance to see all the various options presented here?
To be honest, I'm actually speaking on behalf of 4 of the other residents that I was able to speak to today, and they weren't aware of the changes until one of them in particular contacted me this morning. But I'm not sure, I can't speak on their behalf as to whether or not they've seen the proposals. But as one of the residents suggested, this has been going for a long, long time now. So, you know, for the officers to want to delay the process even further, you know, it could go on for years.
Yeah. So option 3 has been on the card since about 2017. So as we're now planning to change that, and would you support going out to public consultation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and my suggestions would be to letterbox drop the local residents, and on top of that, perhaps have a public forum to explain in detail what the proposals are. Because at the moment, I've read headlines in the past few weeks about the foreshore, if you like, and to be honest, I skimmed over a lot of the stuff thinking it was just works to fix up the problem down there, but I didn't realise how extensive the change would be, and I believe a lot of residents would be a little bit like me and would be unaware of how drastic and the impact long term these changes would have to the community and the area itself. So yeah, definitely public consultation, letterbox drop, more information, and possibly a public
Okay, I think you've answered the question very well, Mr Day. Any other questions, Councillor Johnson?
Not for Mr Day, but I have got for staff.
Thank you. Ask a question.
Okay, through you, Mr Mayor, I guess to Mr Coaten. I noticed that we've got 3 options here, but there's something like 5 different options shown from page 27. So we've got concept option 1, stable beach. Then we've got concept option 2, high maintenance beach. Concept option 3, revetment. Concept option 4, vertical wall. Concept option 5, hybrid. And there are further drawings as well that all appear to be different as well. I just wonder how these drawings relate to the 3 options that we've got, because there seem to be 5 options, 5 engineering drawings and 3 options.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, they were some of the options that were prepared in 2017, looking at the various options in terms of different engineering solutions and softer environmental options. Where we've landed at the moment is there's 3 options before council, 3 broad options in terms of doing nothing, or the managed retreat, or the sheep piled wall. Within each of those options, there would be a range of different treatments that could occur.
I understand. And thinking back to I think 2015, 2016, this was being looked at then. I think there was quite an extensive master plan produced at that time. Do you recall that?
Yes, that is correct. I'm not sure of the exact timing, but it was around. Yeah, there was a master plan done in about that time. Yes. And
I think that it went out to consultation, and I think the community said that they didn't want it. They just wanted a simple sheep pile solution. Is that how we ended up with?
Yeah, that was I guess the basis of the consultation at the time. In the report, it does talk about the consultation that occurred in 2016-17, and that was, as Mr Day has pointed out, that was a lot of the feedback that came back from the community in relation to, the water recreational activities and things like that, and having access to the river. That was the recommendation that came to council at the December meeting, and when it was resolved to go and look at other options and have a site meeting, which occurred, and the outcome of that is the recommendation before you now.
So if we've already been down the master plan route, we've already been out to consultation, we've selected an option. Now a small group of councillors want to change it away from what the community wants. Does it look like we need to go back out to public consultation?
Well, that would probably be a decision for council if council wish to go out to public consultation on these 3 options. As Mr Day has pointed out, the original consultation was done some time ago. That would be a decision for council if council wanted to do more public consultation on the options before you.
Okay, thank you, Mr Cohen. Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd like to notify an alternate motion on this to go out to public consultation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Noted. Mr Day, if you can start your deputation on item 5.8, and you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I'll make this one a little bit quicker, obviously, but based on this one, a lot of information went out to local residents, a lot of feedback from local residents, and very, very strong feelings. Unfortunately, and I object the views that have been put forward in deferring this item, in that what the solution that I've proposed is a very cost-effective solution, and one of the things that I did ask for was if there was nothing to be put forward, or if it couldn't go ahead, at least offer some sort of a recommendation as to another option. Nothing was put forward by by the members as to a solution to the problem. One of the easiest things I could think would be just to reduce the speed limit, which is a very cost-effective and easy thing that could be done straight away. Now, the other issue that I have with their report is that their final judgment's based around statistics and the statistics of vehicles in the streets, and unfortunately that doesn't reflect the problem, because the vehicles that are breaking the law and speeding and the hoon activity in the streets is really predominantly only around the peak periods. So your early morning rush and late afternoon rush, and the statistics are based on a 24-hour window. So it's not a true reflection of what's actually going on. They talk about an 85% percentile and things like that, and over the period of a whole day, I can understand how the figures don't really reflect what's actually going on. Now, 20 of the residents signed this petition. Many people were very, very passionate about the issue. We've come up with a solution which I believe is very cost effective and would do a lot for the area. The area is also used in the Heritage Trail, which a lot of people use, and visitors, and I think we should be doing whatever we can to attract people to the area and make it safer for visitors. It's a beautiful area, so we need to do more to preserve that. But I think basing their decision around statistics doesn't really show the full picture, and I can't see why this can't go ahead personally. I just don't understand their judgment, and they haven't given a date as to when they would defer it to. So I just need a little bit more information, and obviously an alternative if they've got one to fixing the problem, because it's obviously been highlighted with the number of people that have signed the petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Day, just to point something out to councillors, this report on page 772 is written by yourself, and that describes the problem. Yeah, so just to point out to councillors, it's not a staff report, it's Mr. Day's own report, and it's very comprehensive. Just to ask the question I think that Mr. Day wants to ask, and that of staff, and if I may, Mr. Mayor, the question is, it says in the key issues recommendation that there will be an implementation of the Safe Active Streets programme, including Helena Street as a potential trial site, will be presented to Council at a future briefing. May I ask when that is likely to be? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Caton, thank you.
I'm just trying to find the date. It is in 22nd of June it's booked in for. So there's a briefing to Council on the 22nd of June 2022.
And I guess we could also have a briefing for the community as well on the Safe Streets programme following that, I presume.
If Council wanted to do that, that could be something that could be organised.
So that's a question. Would I need to move an alternate motion to have a public forum on the Safe Active Streets programme?
Either alternative or an amendment.
Yeah, okay. I'll notify you then, Mr. Mayor, an alternate motion along those lines.
Thank you, and thank you for your participation.
Thanks for your time.
Mr. Day. Item 3.1, Councillors' request to amend Local Heritage Survey 2020. It's on page 115, and Mr. Patrick Irwin from the Midlands Society. Thank you, Mr. Irwin. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, the Midlands Society approves and thanks Council for taking action and to strengthen heritage recognition in Midland with these properties. It's important that Council takes leadership on these matters, and I think some of the statistics in this report bear this comment out. The fact that only 25% roughly consented, of 25% of owners of the 35 approached consented to assessment. Effectively, this tells us that heritage is not really valued or understood in this city by landowners and I think it's very important that Council continue to take a leadership role in this matter, because heritage is a significant part of the asset of this city and including the Midland area. We're the heart of this colony, effectively, here in the Swan Valley. And it needs to be appreciated that development can occur with heritage, and the two can complement one another, and that they both contribute to the urban landscape, to the streetscape, and to the urban design and environment. So I commend the work done thus far on these matters, but I think there's much more to be done, and I advocate that Council and staff keep these matters moving forward. Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? Thank you for your attendance, Mr Irwin. The next item for a deputation, council, is item 4.1, draft Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Land Use Strategy. It's on page 277. We have Mr Richard Janes, Chair of the North Swan Land Conservation District Committees. Thank you, Mr Janes. You have 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors and City of Swan staff. As you said, my name is Richard Janes, and I am speaking on behalf of the North Swan Land Conservation District Committee regarding item 4.1 on the agenda. In regard to the Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Land Use Strategy Plan, there are a number of serious environmental issues that need to be considered by the City of Swan Council and the Planning Department. Precinct A of this strategy plan has already been zoned industrial and is part of the South Bullsbrook Local Structure Plan. I am advised by the City of Swan that the planning framework is now in place for development to be applied, for which would be driven by the landowners. So I do not know if any of my comments can still be taken into account in relation to Precinct A. With regard to groundwater levels, one of the key sections within the Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Land Use Strategy Plan is section 6.2, which deals with sewerage, or more importantly, the lack of a reticulated sewerage system. The strategy area is not serviced by reticulated sewerage, and the Water Corporation have advised that outside of existing planning, no provision for wastewater reticulation for industrial land use has been planned for. Overall, the area has low-lying ground conditions with a high water table. There is currently limited potable water supply in the area and insufficient capacity of existing reticulated sewerage services. It is envisaged that unless a future technological solution is found, significant fill will need to be imported to the area to allow for sufficient drainage and services to be provided. So I don't know if anyone has actually calculated the amount of fill that would be required. Within the Regional Water Management Strategy document, Figure 12 is of particular interest as it shows the area which has a serious risk of waterlogging. If you can see any blue on Figure 12, that's the area of serious waterlogging. With regard to water quality monitoring, if a reticulated sewerage system is unavailable, then aerobic treatment units would probably be required. Within the strategy document, there is no mention of installing water quality monitoring bores on each ATU to ensure no nutrients are leaving the sites and entering the groundwater, which will flow into the Ellen Brook and then into the Swan River. Installation of water quality monitoring bores would probably be a developer cost, not the City of Swan. And ongoing biannual monitoring would be a landowner cost, not to the City of Swan. So either way, water quality monitoring is at no cost to the City of Swan. With regard to revegetation, there is no mention within the document relating to offset revegetation to replace vegetation that will be lost due to development. There has already been significant vegetation lost due to the upgrade of Stock Road between the Great Northern Highway and Railway Parade.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
This revegetation should be carried out within the strategy plan boundary, ideally within the Ellenbrook corridor. With regard to the residents of West Bullsbrook, the strategy plan document states that the West Bullsbrook residential area will not be rezoned industrial. However, that enclave of housing will be bounded by the RAF base Pierce to the east and industrial areas to the south and to the west. An unenviable situation, especially as that area is already impacted by PFAS contamination. I believe a socio-economic impact assessment should be undertaken to ensure that West Bullsbrook residents do not become socially and economically disadvantaged by this development.
Thank you, Mr James. Have you got much to go? You've had your 5 minutes.
One sentence, councillors. I urge you to study these documents carefully. Your decisions will have long-lasting consequences.
Thank you, Mr James. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson of staff, thank you. Thank you for your attendance, Mr James, and your deputation. Councillor Henderson, you have a question for staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr James has raised some very important issues, particularly with impact on the Ellenbrook and monitoring systems alike. Could staff perhaps give an outline of how this would be managed?
Mr Van der Linde.
May I ask Councillor to just repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, do you refer to the water management itself?
Water management issues affecting the Ellenbrook.
Okay. Mr Mayor, the water management issues will be addressed in later water management plans that will be prepared. This strategy includes a regional water management strategy that's been submitted, and it identifies that the detailed aspects need to be addressed at a district level and then at a local level. So more detail will become available through those processes. Certainly all the issues raised by Mr James are very valid, and that's the reason why this ended up being a strategy. The department started to prepare this as a structure plan, and we've highlighted all those issues with them, and that's why this ended up as a strategy document that basically identifies all the outstanding issues that still have to be addressed before further development can take place. So at this stage, this is a very high-level document that just identifies that this area is suitable for development in the long term, but there are many and various issues that still have to be addressed before that can happen.
Happy, Councillor Henderson. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, when Mr James was explaining the waterlogging risk and the amount of fill, I've just looked up the diagram, so I've got the diagram here. Is that right, Mr Van der Linde, that a large amount of fill would have to be placed on that blue area that shows waterlogging?
Mr Mayor, that is correct. That's why it's identified that the alternative technological solutions will have to be looked at. In fact, in terms of the question that Mr James also mentioned, is how much fill would you require to actually develop this total area, which is about 2,500 hectares. I remember in one of the workshops they've actually calculated that there won't be enough fill in Western Australia to do that. You'll have to import fill from South Australia probably to do that. So there's certainly other alternatives that will still have to be looked at. That's a huge issue.
Thank you. That takes us to the next deputation. It's item 4.4, proposed amendment number 209 to local planning scheme number 17 to rezone southern portion of Lot 9000 Cranwood Crescent, Middle Swan, from general industrial to residential with a density code of R20. It's on page 317, and the first in-person deputation is by Miss Melinda Brackley. Thank you, Melinda. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you. You just push the speak button. Thank you.
My name is Melinda Brackley. I've lived in Vivash for 40 plus years and currently coordinate the Friends of Stuartby Park, saved as public open space in the Pindan subdivision. I'm here to speak against the City's recommendation to grant Hesperia Amendment 209 to local planning scheme from general industry to residential zoning. My reasoning is fourfold: the annihilation of the remainder of an environmental corridor, the safety of residents without a secondary access egress road, insufficient public open space, ongoing exposure of residents to brickworks emissions. Approximately half of Area 3 is vegetation, regrown native species, but in a city of rapidly declining vegetation, native enough to be valuable and warrant retention. The vegetation is the remainder of the corridor that linked Evelyn Reserve with its threatened ecological community to the Swan River foreshore. When Hesperia proposed the subdivisions of Areas 1 and 2, now selling as Rivermark, the community asked for the retention of this stretch of vegetation to be retained as public open space in the Greater Midland Brick residential development. The council supported the community and the Western Australian Planning Commission did not. Western Australian Planning Commission's livable neighbourhood policy states it may require public open space to be provided for the entire area in the first subdivision application. This is the problem with not having a formal structure plan at the commencement of a staged subdivision. Public open space becomes the afterthought instead of being considered in the context of the overall development, where it is likely to be more meaningful and relevant to the community. The livable neighbourhood policy states that the required 10% public open space is in addition to dedicated drainage reserves, bush forever sites and foreshore reserves. Hesperia is offering the community the outer ring of trees at Jack Williamson Oval, partially used for drainage, as part of the required public open space. Furthermore, Hesperia suggests the shortfall will come in the form of the Bush Forever site and river foreshore in the broader Midland Brick development. At least this is what is inferred from Hesperia's concept layout plan and in the absence of a structure plan. Hesperia makes reference to the City of Swan local planning strategy but interprets it completely differently to myself, particularly with regards to its sustainable environment strategy and policy. Hesperia forgets to mention that the proposed Area 3 borders and will likely impact the threatened ecological community at Evelyn Reserve. Hesperia forgets to mention it is annihilating an environmental corridor where small native birds with short wingspans, such as a Category 3 significant species, the weeble, are likely to travel along from Evelyn Reserve. Many small native birds depend on the close proximity of tree canopy for movement and survival. According to the Statutory Planning Policy 3.7, a bushfire management plan should identify the existing and proposed road network and effectiveness in a bushfire emergency. Well, whilst Hesperia will indeed meet the required BAL if it bulldozes the bush, we are still left with a single access and egress route. In 2016, the Pindan subdivision of Vivash was referred to DFAS for comment. To quote the Statutory Planning Committee Agenda Report, DFAS said, DFAS does not support the proposal without the provision of a secondary access route from Vivash. This was because the precautionary principle to allow emergency and other vehicles to move through easily and safely was not achievable without the provision of a second vehicular access route. 3 developers later, hundreds of houses later, and Hesperia-led community consultation night whereby many expressed their concern about a single access and egress way, and still our evacuation plan, the best one we have, is to don our swimmers and head for the Swan. Hesperia plans to have Evelyn Road in May to August 2022, but where is the structure plan to ensure this before you start any further works? Hesperia's report, supported by the City of Swan, describes how Midland Brick operations will continue maximising capacity on a smaller footprint as the development progresses. Hesperia leases the buildings to BGC. Isn't this the company that sought to plonk operations on federal land previously so as not to abide by state emissions?
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
By leasing this land to BGC, removing the earth fund and vegetation, increasing housing density in the direction of the brickworks, you continue to expose residents to significant emissions, including carcinogens and respiratory antagonists. Monitoring has been haphazard in the past. Quarterly monitoring measurements have enabled Brickworks to adjust operations to meet compliance limits. Midland Primary School closed because of emissions. In 2006-2007, Midland Brick was prosecuted for over-emissions. It is Is it clever to trust Hesperia in the absence of a structured plan without first demanding adequate amenity for residents, adequate protection of our natural environment, adequate safety measures to ensure safe access and egress from our suburb, and avoidance of exposure to unnecessary emissions? No, it is not. We have an offer of less than 10% public open space, and they want to include bush forever and river frontage in that, which the WAPC does not permit.
Thank you, Ms Brackley. That's your 5 minutes. How much longer have you got to go?
I've got probably 1 minute.
Thank you. I've got no objection, so please continue.
Thank you. We have bulldozing of an environmental corridor that is likely to adversely impact the tech of neighbouring Evelyn Reserve. We have the blatant disregard of the community's express request to maintain the earth bund for amenity and as an environmental corridor. We have no formal plan to provide residents with a secondary access and egress route, in spite of DFES claiming that it should be the case. We have a 5-metre wall and a pile of sea containers as sight, sound and dust mitigation to the brickworks, and a memo added to a certificate that fails to acknowledge the potential health impacts of brickworks emissions. We have a developer who has commenced conversation with local Aboriginal people whilst concurrently sorting and succeeding to have Brentford Avenue ID site 4382, an Aboriginal Heritage Registered Artefact Scatter site, removed from the list of registered Aboriginal sites to enable the development of areas 1 and 2, perpetuating the disconnect between Aboriginal people and their land. Let's hope that the councillors here will safeguard the interests of Vivash residents a little better than Hesperia and the City of Swan so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I don't drive a Commodore.
Welcome to the chamber again, Mel. We've discussed this Fisherland before a few times, haven't we? So I think what you're saying is you would like to retain the bund with the trees on it as an environmental reserve.
Yeah, and that's the same thing we asked in the
Same thing we asked for last time. So the development of that land on the other side of the bund to the I guess. Which side is that? To the east of the bund, you'd be okay with that being developed for housing?
To the
current industrial area.
Yep.
You'd be okay with that being developed?
Yep.
Okay. And I guess you've got a question about the road as well. Obviously, you want the second road.
Well, that should have gone in before the first stage. That should have gone in before the Demol development, and that should have gone in before the Pindan subdivision.
Yep.
So we had an incident a couple of weeks ago where a car rolled, and it was lucky it rolled into Evelyn Reserve. If it had rolled on the road, there's no way in, no way out for anybody else.
Okay, understood. Okay, look, those are all my questions, Mr. Mayor. I've got a question for staff.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms Brackley? No, then thank you for your attendance and your deputation. Question for staff. Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a question for the planning staff. My reading of this is that the developer is going to connect Evelyn Road into Vivash. Can I just get confirmation of that?
Thank you, Mr Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's entirely correct. As Ms Brackley has correctly pointed out, Hesperia are actually under deed as we speak with us. They've executed a deed committing to deliver, as part of the second stage of subdivision for not this land but the adjoining land, for the construction and connection through of Everline Road. So the timeframes that Ms Brackley has outlined in her presentation are correct. They're signed up under deed. Hesperia have been told in no uncertain terms what the expectations are, and assuredly they won't receive any clearances on their second stage of subdivision out of this organisation without the fulfilment of their deed obligations for the delivery of that road.
Okay, so they can build this first stage without the road, but if they want to build the second stage, they have to build the road. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll make it plain, it's not the land in question here, it's the adjoining cleared land. If we refer to the your photos in the agenda, if you look on page 329, but actually maybe more usefully on page 326, where you've got the highlighted subject lot, if you look just to the north of that, between where the existing residential development is in that cleared area, that's the subdivision that we're referring to, that has a first stage clearance has just been issued, and part of all of that under the condition was satisfactory arrangements for delivery of Everline Road, and satisfactory arrangements have been secured by way of the provision of the deed. So as part of that, before we even get to this, because this is just an amendment, we would expect to have, before the end of this year, the fulfilment of the deed obligations for the provision of Everline Road through. So yes, it should predate any subdivision occurring on this land.
Okay, thanks. I think I understand that. So just to be precise, on page 329, there is an area marked Area 3, which is the area they're planning to develop. So what you're saying is that Evelyn Road would be extended into Vivash before Area 3 was developed.
That's correct, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thanks. With the Evelyn portion of Evelyn Road that is owned by the city, what plans are there to widen the road or do any works on the road by the city?
Mr Russell?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not aware that there is any necessary upgrades to the existing Everline Road, but I can take that on notice to confirm.
Oh, yes, thank you. Because what I want to make everyone aware of is the fact that Evelyn Reserve is in fact a threatened ecological community. I wondered whether you were aware of that at all, Mr Russell? Planning staff?
Yes.
You are aware of it? Okay, thanks. And so what kind of controls would go in place? And I'm talking about, for anybody listening, a threatened ecological floristic community. So that's a community of plants that are now very rare and threatened and protected under the Federal Government Act. What kind of controls would be put in place to ensure that vegetation in that threatened ecological community wasn't disturbed by roadworks or what have you?
Mr Mayor, if I can clarify, we're referring to the extension through the Midland Brickland of the Everline Road Reserve?
I'm referring to, well, the bit that goes west of Jack Williamson Oval. And that crosses over that area of threatened ecological flora, community flora.
Well, through you, Mr Mayor, I think
community.
we would need to clarify as to whether we're referring to any portions of Everline Road that are currently a gazetted public road, or whether we're referring to those portions, if I refer to the map on page 328 that's coloured purple, that's part of the Midland Brick site where the road will ultimately go through.
Okay, so maybe could we have that clarification now? Where does the land begin and end? Where does the...
Well, perhaps it's a bit difficult in this forum, but you've got a week until we have consideration. Perhaps in that week,
Okay.
Councillor
All
Catalano,
right.
you can clarify
Okay.
everything with the planning staff, and if be Mr Coaten about any road widenings or whatever you're requesting.
Okay then.
Thank you.
So can I ask another question about drainage?
You can ask a question, yes.
If we go to page 381, you'll see it. There's a little legend down the side, and number 10. There's this drainage treatment in public open space. Does that relate to stormwater or any other kind of drainage coming off this development into the public open space, into this Evelyn Reserve with this threatened floristic community that I've referred to?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, this is the drainage concept for the whole of the subdivision of the subject land, subject to this amendment. That's right.
So, in fact, the water that's coming off the private estate is going to be then discharged straight into a threatened floral community on a reserve? on a City of Swan reserve. I believe it's a C-class reserve.
Through Mr Mayor, I think it's important to note at this stage this is a concept proposal that Hesperia has put forward through their consultants for how they would envisage the matter of subdivision drainage being dealt with. It's important to note that we haven't yet made I haven't got a subdivision application in front of us, and neither has the city made any recommendation on it. So none of what you see in front of you should be read as being a fait accompli in terms of how this land would be subdivided and how the drainage associated with such a subdivision will be managed. It is, in essence, premature. So certainly, as part of these subdivision arrangements, you have an urban water management plan, which typically needs to be approved by the city. So we remain with the power to determine the form in which we accept subdivision drainage under any subsequent subdivision application. So it might be premature to take views as to the appropriateness of anything presented in this document as part of this amendment proposal.
But could it just be included as a condition at this stage?
Through Mr Mayor, no, in essence, because this amendment proposal is simply to zone the land to residential. It doesn't have any provision for any additional conditions to be attached to it.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My question is, through you, Mr Mayor, to the planning staff. Why is a structure plan not needed?
Through Mr Mayor, look, I'll be clear here. It is open to the council to prefer to have this amendment not for the land to go directly to residential, but for the land to be instead zoned residential development, which would require a structure plan. So it's open for the council if its preference on this amendment is to do that. What we've got here is, given we're dealing with a discrete parcel of land that's already urban under the Metropolitan Region Scheme and has been for more than 50 years, we're comfortable enough to suggest that most of the issues in terms of the subdivision layout and its obvious connection through to Everline Road, which has already been a matter that has been resolved, it's sufficient to permit the land to be zoned without a structure plan and just to deal with it fundamentally through subdivision design. But it is open to the council if it prefers to instead resolve that the amendment ought to be for a residential development zone with an attendant structure plan. Ultimately, of course, the final decision on this amendment will be with the Minister, but it is open to council if its preference is that way.
Councillor Catalano.
Oh, yes, thank you. I just wanted to also ask about the standard amendment process that that is referred to on page 319. I did look up the planning and development regs and just noticed the thing about the standard amendment is that, it's one where there's an amendment to the local planning scheme, but that's where the amendment would only have minimal impact on land in the scheme area, and also where the amendment doesn't result in significant environmental, social, economic or governance impacts on the land in the area. So I was just wondering, given that we've heard about trees being, chopped down and perhaps other social aspects to do with the site, why that would not mean that it should become a complex amendment instead.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I suppose the answer to that question is whether or not you consider the removal of some trees as being of a significant environmental impact. So there's a degree of inherent subjectivity in the perception of the reader or the judge as to whether it falls into one category or the other. And I might add, the West Australian Planning Commission and the industry at large has acknowledged that these categories are fairly broad and you can park your amendment within one or the other, or make a reasonable case to park your amendment into one category or the other. It certainly needs some refinement. The salient reason why we've characterised this as a standard amendment is because it's an amendment largely designed to be compliant with the Metropolitan Region Scheme. And that's been the principal driver of our assessment that the amendment is a standard assessment under the regulations.
Councillor Kylie, you are next.
Thank you. Mr Russell, through you, Mayor, if I could. Mr Russell, you mentioned before that it will ultimately be up to the Minister to approve this. I just want you to confirm that for the... so once we support and initiate the amendment, it will ultimately be out of our hands. And given that is the case, to what degree do you suggest we make changes to this, or recommend changes to this, so that we can get better outcomes for the community?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, yes, it's absolutely correct that once the amendment is initiated, the final decision on the amendment rests with the Minister for Planning. To reiterate a previous answer I made, I think it is entirely open and reasonable enough for the Council, if it prefers, that it would like to see a zoning that first requires a structure plan for the land. It is, in my opinion, entirely reasonable. It's a line ball call, if I can use that phrase. It's entirely a line ball call that if the Council prefers to have a structure plan in place for this land, if its preference is thus, it should then, it can seek to resolve instead to have the zoning for residential development as opposed to outright residential. It's entirely reasonable for that to happen, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Knight, you are next.
Thanks, Mayor. Hesperia references on page 359 the City of Swan Urban Forest Plan, the draft 2019 to 2039. Where is that? Is that the report that's coming to Council soon?
Mr Van der Linde.
Yes, that is correct, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bowman, you are next.
Mr Mayor, question of you. Is there any chance we can listen to the other deputations first before we ask questions of the staff? And I ask this question because we've got other deputations in other items when there's two or three more.
Yes, I'll allow Councillor Johnson to ask his last question, then we'll move on to the next speaker. Councillor Johnson, you had one more question?
See, Mr Mayor, I kind of agree with Councillor Bowman, so I'll wait until after I've heard more deputations.
Thank you. Then I'll ask the next speaker, Miss Leonie Harkness, to come forward and make her deputation. Miss Harkness, you'll have 5 minutes once you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of you have already covered a lot of my points already with that discussion, which was really good, so I'll try and not keep you too long. So I'm Leonie. I moved to Varvash late last year with my partner and our 2 little dogs. I'm opposing the current development proposal for 2 main reasons. Firstly, as we've talked about, the lack of public open space plan for the development, and that currently it is less than 10%, and part of that space is going to be used for drainage, as you've talked about, which means it's not really going to be appropriate for community use. And secondly, while I understand the subdivision is not set in stone at the moment in this proposal, the development at the moment has 6 new intersections along Cranwood Crescent on the western boundary, which is going to interrupt a footpath which is highly utilised at the moment by community, ranging from children walking home from school to dog walkers like myself heading down to the river. The new development is estimated it's going to generate about 1,500 new daily trips taken into Varvash on the roads, with Cranwood being one of the main 2 feeds into Zone 3. So I guess what I'm getting at, if the proposed development does go ahead, I'd just like to suggest some inclusion of more public space. If they're going to get rid of the bund along Cranwood Crescent, the western boundary, if they could include a park along there, that would provide landscape linkage and a wildlife corridor to the Swan River, which would meet the livable neighbourhood requirements. It would provide public open space for the community to use, which would include a larger reticulated area of grass, some basketball courts, playgrounds, things like that for children. It would prevent an increase of traffic into Cranwood Crescent and perhaps develop quieter cul-de-sacs in the new development or loop streets, which would be favoured by families, and ultimately provide the community open space in the middle of the suburb rather than on the edge, which will be able to be utilised by everyone as a whole and providing for all ages. So, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No, thank you for your attendance and your deputation. And we've got one more speaker, and I believe it's Mr Tim Tahung from Element in support of the recommendation. Thank you, Tim. You have 5 minutes once you start speaking.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's actually Tim Chung from Hesperia Property. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight in support of item 4.4, the proposed amendment number 2096 to rezone the southwestern portion of the former Midland Brickworks site from industrial to residential R20. This proposed zoning is in keeping with the existing urban zoning of the MRS, or the Metropolitan Region Scheme. It is important to note that the proposal tonight seeks to initiate the scheme amendment to enable public advertising and government agency comments to be provided to the City for its consideration. This process will enable the City staff and Council to then subsequently assess any feedback to the rezoning proposal and represent to Council for determination. This proposal does not seek to subdivide the land into residential lots. It simply seeks to change the land use from industrial to residential. Matters relating to subdivision will be subject to a subsequent separate application to the West Australian Planning Commission and the City of Swan for determination. The detailed design for this site, Area 3 has been referred to, will therefore be subsequently worked through in consultation with the City. This will include maximising tree canopies across the site, including along Cranwood Crescent on the existing earth bund, appropriate road networks to manage traffic movement and ensure the designs have consideration for existing trees to ensure they are protected through the community. Ensuring good east-west connectivity is provided to the existing community to gain direct access to Jack Williamson Oval, which sits to the east of the area site, along with the connections to the future master plan community linking the entire Vivash community to a planned river hub and foreshore. We will provide an appropriate mix of lot sizes and configuration, noting the R20 density, average of 450 square metres, will be required based on the current ANEF contour restrictions. As an update which has been covered today, secondary vehicle access will be delivered to the existing Vivash community, with construction of Evelyn Road linking through to Cranwood Crescent currently being awarded as work for the next phase of construction with the Rivermark development. Hesperia looks forward to collaborating with the City of Swan to progress the next stages of this community to redevelop the former brickwork site and reconnect Rivermark with the Vivash community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Catalano?
Thank you. Just curious about your contaminated soils report. Who was it that undertook the contaminated soils report for you?
It's carried out through Emerge Associates.
Pardon?
Emerge Associates.
Emerge. And do you have a copy of it available?
We do.
Would you be able to send me a copy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley first.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm just interested to know, I'm not too sure how this whole process works. Do you, as a proponent, discuss this plan or the proposed rezoning with the department, with the WAPC, or who? And you obviously meet with the City to discuss it. Do you also meet with the Minister's office as well?
We do meet with the Planning Commission. Thank you. And
sorry, what was that?
Yes, we do. We do meet with the Planning Commission. Sorry.
And what was their reaction to this? I mean, you run it by them and before you put it in for the City for a decision. Is that how it works?
There was consultation with the Commission, which was supportive of the application.
They're supportive. Okay, so, okay, thank you.
I should also note that we have engaged with the local community as well through October and February of this year, right. Essentially speaking of updates and what's planned for the broader area, knowing that it's a larger community, not just us and them.
Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. I guess the question that probably a lot of people in the community would ask is...
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Johnson's got the floor.
Why is the public open space provided in the later stages rather than in this early stage? Yes. So there is an area, that area known as the Bond, which has a lot of trees on it at the moment. Would it not be better to keep that as an established wildlife corridor rather than introducing two new wildlife corridors in what is now an industrial area? So if you turn to page 329, That's the page. I think that shows those two vertical corridors there, both indicated with a number 1. So that's to come in the future, but before we get that, and many years into the future before those trees would grow, we're losing the bund. So can we keep the bund?
There's definitely, yes, from the project team and from the design team, we are investigating potential design solutions to retain the strip of trees along the bund. We do acknowledge that there's a 4 to 5 metre plus difference in levels from the existing road reserve, that's on the established Cranwood Crescent Road Reserve. But we are looking into this. And in response to the question around the timing of delivery, we've also identified the key, value to the broader community of activating a river foreshore that has been absent for 70, 80 odd years, to ensure that we also create a community hub where everyone can congregate to meet. And along that, with the other connections to the TECs, we are enriching and doing revegetation works that will occur at a later stage of development, and which stormwater that was discussed earlier will pipe and convey through to the south through the existing tributary back to the Swan River, and these will all be strengthened through the works that we'll deliver.
I guess the real question is, would the owner be open to changing the design so that it retained some of the bond along Cranwood Crescent?
Acknowledging the stage that we're in, there's definitely the opportunity to do so.
What would be the process then to change the design?
Through the subdivision, through the application of subdivision, we would look to retain the trees within the bund.
Okay. Question is, if I may, Mr. Mayor, in this bond area, which is some areas are undisturbed, some areas are very disturbed, are there any Aboriginal heritage sites? I don't have Appendix D, which is the environmental study.
No, there's not. From what I can see, the area you're pointing towards, no.
This has been to council before, and I believe there were at least 2.
Are you referring to Area 3, the subject Area 3?
Area 3, yeah.
I'll have to look at that in a bit of close. I can't quite see from here, sorry.
It's areas 1 and 2.
1 and 2, okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it sounds like you're correct. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Catalano.
Yes, I was just curious to know why you decided on an R20 subdivision zoning for this portion.
The R20, so we've done extensive studies through the customer profiling and product that suits, and from that on the understanding, we believe R20 is a suitable product type to meet the customer needs of the area, and as a result, we have proposed to zone the density coding of R20 across the area.
Okay, and the other thing about the planting that you want to do in the threatened ecological community, which area are you talking about there?
So the sections to the southeast, which are bordered by Bassett Road and Leslie Road, which is to the southeast of our site, where the existing clay shed is, there is a TEC, or Threatened Ecological Community, which sits within that area.
Yep.
There will be surrounding areas around that, which will become public open space. And through the necessary management plans, through the delivery, we will look to enrich and revegetate the appropriate areas with the suitable planting, etc.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions, Councillor Kiley?
Just a quick one. Would you consider going to R40 or the like? Would it?
Currently under the ANEF contours, R20 is the maximum density. R40 would not be compliant.
And do you know who would allow that change, permit that change?
My understanding would be the Minister.
And would you be willing to? Would it be something that you would desire to do?
If there is the opportunity, R40 will deliver a larger yield to the area.
Yeah, but they keep the bund. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your attendance and your deputation. Councillors, you've had more questions of staff. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, sure. So it sounds like the applicant's willing to make some changes to this to preserve some of the trees. So what's the process? Can we come up with a different map for the R20 area, or do we defer it for public consultation? What would be the better way forward?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant has indicated to you that what they might be prepared to do is to look at it through the subdivision application process, which is fair enough. I would simply say this. The subdivision application process is the process, it's the WAPC that determines that, as you know, not this council. So you're not in the driver's seat with respect to that. Having said that, even if you were to follow the notion, as it indicated, of perhaps preferring a residential development zone here which requires a structure plan, unfortunately, again, it's just a referral agency. The Commission makes the decision on the structure plan. So I suppose looking at it, either way, the process, you could say, well, you could deal with it as a subdivision stage, you can deal with it as a structure plan by changing the zoning from residential to a residential development. But either way, the fact of the matter is you're not in the driver's seat with respect to the final decision. So I suppose the question might be, if it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, one doesn't give you any much more control than the other. But generally speaking, it is preferable in the planning system to deal with matters at the appropriate level. So if you're looking at some conceptual things where you might be contemplating changing, for example, any configuration of public open space through this, or dealing with matters of an address of the bund, it is, from a planning perspective, more ideal to deal with it through a structure plan than to try and deal with it through a subdivision application.
Any more, Councillor Johnson? Thank you. No other questions, councillors. And it takes us to the next item. It's item 4.5, SAT Reconsideration Responsible Authority Report, Proposed Educational Establishment, Henley Street, Australian Drive, Henley Brook. It's on page 386 and have Mr Alex McGlue acting for the proponents. Thank you, Mr McGlue. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, councillors, for the opportunity to speak. I am the lawyer who is acting for the Australian Islamic College in its SAT appeal regarding its proposed new school campus in Henley Brook. The reason I'm here this evening is to confirm for the benefit of council that my client fully supports the officer recommendation that has been put together. And I will explain to you why it is supported and answer any questions that council may have. So in terms of how we got to this point, it's important to keep in mind that development approval already has been granted, and this SAT appeal that is currently underway relates to a handful of conditions. There have so far been 2 mediations in the SAT appeal, and the SAT has recently made reconsideration orders. So this matter is going back to the JDAP in the second half of April. There are 4 subject matters under discussion before the SAT, which can be summarised as design changes, landscaping, road upgrades and public art. In relation to the design changes and the landscaping, these subject matters have basically now been resolved by a combination of additional information being provided or my client deciding to accept the conditions as they're currently written. In relation to road upgrades, the conditions as currently written require a significant contribution to a stretch of road that is several kilometres long. The proposed revised condition contemplates a contribution to a smaller section of road, which will actually be an area of road that is highly frequented by people coming to and leaving the school. And it contemplates a proportional contribution rather than my client contributing the whole amount. So in my client's view, that is objectively reasonable and something that my client can live with. In relation to public art, the condition currently requires public art of a particular value of no particular description to be completed or to be formulated prior to the submission of a building permit. And that building permit requirement is the real problem here, because it has the potential to really delay the implementation of this project. What the proposed new condition says is that I should backtrack one step. My client, following the SAT process, has landed on a public art concept that it is willing to implement. So the proposed new condition is a lot more simple and basically says implement this particular public art proposal and do so prior to occupation. So I reiterate that my client fully supports the RAR that has been put together by staff. If the JDAP adopts the RAR recommendation in April, the SAT proceeding that I am dealing with will be entirely resolved, and importantly, the development will proceed very soon after and hopefully be ready to take students for the 2023 academic year. I therefore invite Council to support the officer's recommendation and to endorse the RAR that goes to JDAP. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman first.
Do you think it's fair that your clients don't have to pay a DC contribution amount, which was $6 million, that now the City of Swan ratepayers will have to fund, and now you're challenging conditions that require a part contribution financially?
I think that the outcome recommended by the staff is entirely fair. There's the question of whether it's fair. There's also the question of whether it's legal. There is currently no development contribution plan. A development approval has been granted. There is no way for a developer contribution to now be levied. In any case, the outcome that my client is seeking in SAT and will be seeking if this goes to a final hearing is to pay no contribution to the roads. This mediated outcome, if it is endorsed, will result in what my client considers to be a reasonable contribution. So the idea is based...
Mr Mayor, I think the person's answered the question or not answered the question.
Well, if you're satisfied, then...
well, no, I'm not satisfied, but he's not actually answering the question, so there's no point.
Well, I did answer the question. I think it is fair.
My second question is, why should your client not have to pay the 1% public art when everyone else does?
Well, I would answer that with a rhetorical question. What is the benefit of a particular dollar value for public art? The emphasis should be on what are the practical benefits created by public art. The city's staff have concluded that this proposal satisfies the planning objectives in the policy. So we could deliver the exact same thing and build it out of gold. It'll be worth more, but will it create any additional benefit to the community? I say absolutely not. And the 1% comes from a policy. It's not binding.
Any more questions, Councillor Bowman?
No point, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr McGlue. I think you're probably aware that I've been against public art as a tax on business for quite a long time. And I really want to pick up on the point, though. Whether it's gold or whether it's anything else is irrelevant. Why doesn't this proposal have to pay the full amount, whereas others do? I want an answer that's got some validity to it, because it doesn't matter if it's gold, it's just the quantity and the quantum.
One reason, which is articulated in the grounds of review in the SAT appeal, is that a 1% standard levy might make perfect sense for an apartment developer, for someone building offices, because they are in it to make money, and 1% should be a reasonable contribution. What we have here is an education provider who is a not-for-profit organisation. If there is a standard requirement, for no other reason than because the policy says so, to levy 1%, this will require a not-for-profit education provider to stump up $500,000 approximately. I would say that an education provider would be much better off, and the community would be much better off, if that $500,000 is instead put towards education or to some other useful purpose. So that is why I say the standard 1% shouldn't apply.
So you're saying that a public school should only put up half the money for public art because of those reasons? Is that the reasoning?
I would suggest that the focus should not be on the dollar value. It should be on the quality. Quality over quantum.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Mr McGlue? Then I thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much.
Just before I go to questions to staff by councillors, I've just had a late disclosure of interest handed to me by Councillor Richardson. It's an indirect financial declaration, as Mr McGlue is representing herself at the SAT in a matter which Councillor Richardson is undertaking. So there's a financial relationship between her and Mr McGlue. So with that being now registered, I'll now take questions to staff. Councillor Bowman.
Can I ask staff how many other not-for-profit education applications have not paid the full public art amount?
Through Mr Mayor, to my recollection, there are no, and there's no other instances where we've had a not-for-profit private school or educational institution get a discount on public art.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, my final question to staff. Am I correct that there would have been a $6 million contribution from DCP if the DCP had been in place, and as such now the ratepayers of the City of Swan will have to cover that amount?
Mr Russell.
Through Mr Mayor, just to clarify, and we did discuss this myself and Mr van der Linde with Councillor Bowman this morning, that the $6 million originally advised is actually closer to about $5 million, but nonetheless it is true that the any failure to impose a DCP contribution liability on this land means that there will be a contribution shortfall in any future DCP for the Henley Brook Structure Plan area, and any shortfall to the developer contribution plan will be to be made good by the local authority.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson.
Mr Mayor, in view of the fact that staff have accepted just about more than half of the art contribution for this particular proposal, can we consider, would staff consider, shall I say, that we should review our public art policy to resolve that issue, but also the broader question of the amount of money it costs business for public art?
Well, I think that's a decision this council would make and not staff. Councillor Henderson.
Mr Mayor, we already have this under review. You may recall it's already under review. So I'm a bit of a loss in why you'd ask for it to be reviewed again after it's under review.
We have new information before us. Someone asks for half, they get half.
Thank you. I don't think it takes us anywhere forward tonight, Councillor Henderson. I think you've made your point clear. Are there any other questions of staff on this item, councillors?
I'll be withdrawing it.
Thank you. That takes us to the next item, councillors. That's item 4.6, Responsible Authority Report, Proposed Childcare Premises on Amazon Drive, Beachborough. It's on page 423. And I have in-person deputation from Mr Willie Himmerlich. Thank you. If you make your way to the microphone, push the speak button and you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you, sir.
My name is Willy Himmelreich and my wife Rona is present here. We both live at the address of 22 Cherwell Avenue, just opposite the proposed childcare premises, lot 301, number 150 Amazon Drive in Beachborough. We received about 4 weeks ago a letter from the council to mention that there is a proposed development of a childcare centre at Amazon Drive 150 and asked me to give my opinion about this development. I was strongly opposed to this development of the childcare centre. I answered to the council in writing and gave my views. Only about a week ago, I received a report about this development with photos, drawings, and even the answer towards my case when I wrote my recommendations. And so the council was very nice and satisfied all my problems I had before. So duly, now I would like to add more recommendations to your most informative report concerning the proposed childcare centre at number 150 Amazon Drive, Beachboro. Firstly, the proposed car park is not very suitable to drop off or pick up any juvenile child or worse, an infant baby. By design or the park or of the car park layout, a smooth flow for arriving and departing of any traffic is utterly awkward, therefore accident prone to parent and toddler. Above all, it will be stressful and time consuming for the parent to turn the cars around safely and integrate it in the fast flowing traffic at the Amazon Drive, especially at peak hour. I have a strong foreboding that the majority of the parents ease their frustration by turning into Cherwell Avenue, where I live, and make use of the 2 verge parking bays you have provided. So my concern is that at peak hour, the parking bays are not adequate to park the arriving parents at once. And sure enough, and most definitely parents shall park wherever it is space on the verge on both sides of Cherwell Avenue. I mention this because we have been living with this nuisance of people parking at all times of the day in our driveway and on the verge. My question is to you is, if we encounter problems with people parking in our driveway, to whom we can go for help to resolve the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. Hemright, for your attendance. Councillor Kyle, you indicated first.
I'll just hold off for a second, Mayor. Thank you until I get my thoughts.
Okay, Councillor Henderson, you're next.
This is the staff. Would the childcare centre be considered like as a public purpose or public use?
Mr. Russell.
Very broadly, Mr. Mayor, it's obviously delivering a community service. There is, as everyone would be aware, great demand. The current time, maybe it's always been a great demand for childcare services. So yes, it does deliver a public benefit.
Thank you. So perhaps they could apply for half the public art content as well?
Councillor Johnson, do you have a question?
I've got a question. Just to ask Mr. Himmelreich's question again through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. So what should Mr. Himmelreich do if somebody parks in his drive?
I think that's a Mr. Bishop question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you should report it to the city because it would be an offence unless it was with his approval.
And just the way to do that, is that to call 9267 9267?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Catalano.
Yes, I'm actually concerned about the traffic entering into the car park from Amazon Drive and also exiting the car park. So I'd like to know what kind of studies have been done to ensure that that is actually a feasible option at peak hour times. Anybody?
I'm just seeing Mr. Russell. Do you know of any?
Yes, thank you. Bear with me, please, Mr. Mayor, for a second. I just wanted to see there whether this was actually subject of a traffic impact statement, which is a basic report on traffic, or whether it's subject of a traffic impact statement. Yes. So the way this works is that the WA Planning Commission has policy guidelines with respect to land use developments and the traffic they generate. And below a certain threshold, in terms of daily traffic volumes and peak hour traffic, below a certain threshold you only apply a traffic impact statement, which is basically setting out these things to say more or less the thresholds are well within the capacity of the road, it's not an issue. This is an application where the volumes of traffic daily and at peak hour fall within the threshold of a traffic impact statement, as opposed to a traffic impact assessment, for higher order land uses that generate greater volumes of daily and peak hour traffic, where you're really considering whether or not the road is capable of handling it. So, in essence, the volumes of traffic generated or anticipated to be generated by the development should be readily accommodated by Amazon. That's right.
Is there any chance that I can have a look at some of those stats?
Through Mr Mayor, we can provide any additional documentation submitted as part of this application to any interested councillor.
Yes, please. So what I'd like to see is the thresholds and
Yes.
also the number of cars using it at peak hour. Thank you.
Are you talking
Peak hour
about-
in the morning and peak hour in the evening.
You're
Thank
talking
you.
about cars using Amazon Drive.
Correct. Yes,
you.
because the traffic's going to go in and out onto Amazon Drive. So,
I'll just point out that is a current business currently operating there, which has a car park to the west of its current building location, and that car park is only 6 metres from the intersection of Sherwell and Amazon. This proposal is putting the car park another 40, perhaps 40 metres to the east, which would take it a longer way away from Sherwell. And if you read the access and traffic report on page 439, it deals with those questions. It doesn't give you the numbers, and the staff will get back to you on that. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. It's just that if cars can't get in and out of that car park, what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of parking on verges because it's a lot easier to get in and out of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Kiley?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just to staff. I would have imagined Sherwell Avenue would have been a better option for an access point to remove the traffic off Amazon. Was that ever considered?
Through Mr Mayor, yes, in fact, the original proposal was sought to utilise the current existing configuration, which actually has the car parking to the front and did propose a crossover and an access point running along the northern boundary linking through to the car park. But for urban design reasons, when this application was referred to a design consultant for review, the opinion was, which was also shared by staff, that having the car parking to the front as opposed to sleeve behind the development was an inferior design outcome. So in the end, and as the Mayor has pointed out, we liaised with the proponent to have them reconfigure their design to respond to the design issues identified, to sleeve the car parking, and in the end, the configuration they've chosen is to actually not have access off the residential side street and to have sole access from Amazon Drive in the car parking configuration that you see before you. So as a result of the iteration of resolving design issues, the access way off the residential side street was removed. I would also note, and Council would be well aware of this, there is often a tendency with these sorts of applications to have concern expressed by residents of traffic in residential streets. By this design, you're removing the traffic off the residential street and you're putting it onto an arterial road.
Question, Councillor Catalano.
The other thing I wanted to ask about is why is the children's play area right on the corner of it, on two roads? I mean, effectively, exposed to all that traffic emissions, and the building set back closer to the houses. I just don't understand why things aren't being designed the other way around so that the children are protected from the emissions and from the traffic noise and the dust and what have you. I mean, a lot of children have got asthma and these kind of conditions these days, and the building's located on the perimeter next to the road, adjacent to the road, so that they don't end up having that noise, that interface with the buildings.
Mr Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, it's a design juggle. One of the concerns, and councillors, you'll be well aware of this when you hear from residents that express concerns with these proposals in terms of the levels of noise generated by children. So the proponent, by having the outdoor play area effectively surrounded and bracketed by the design of the building and acts as a degree of shield of children's noise to the surrounding residences. Albeit, of course, it does place it to the front, but you might say that creates an activation by having the play area to the front of the development. You could make that argument. Certainly, we haven't taken the view that having a play area proximate to a road has any particular forms of health impact or adverse amenity impact on children that will be spending limited quantities of time per day in the outdoor area.
Councillor Kiley.
To staff, through you, Mayor. I note that there's 2 embayment parking on Cherwell provided. Why is that? Why haven't we got 3 or 4 at least on Amazon Drive? Or is it considered an arterial road and too busy to have reverse parking? So the question is, if it's too busy to have reverse parking on Amazon, why are we having an access point in and out on Amazon if it's a arterial road, as you said before? I'm just not working through the logic on that.
Very simply, Mr Mayor, one's not as bad as the other.
Any other questions, councillors? Just so those councillors are not aware, Amazon Road is a 50-kilometre speed zone, which is heavily trafficked by police. So my wife tells me every day when she comes home and goes to work that way. Also, almost opposite, not quite, but just adjacent, is a shopping centre, and they have 3 driveways going on to Amazon Drive. So the current building at this location also has a driveway going on to Amazon Drive, so locals are aware of the local road conditions. Okay, there's no more questions. We're going on to item 4.7. It's Lifestyle Village Park Home Park, lot 158 and others on Andrea Drive, Hemybrook. It's on page 448 of your agenda, and I have, I believe, Mr John Wood and Mr John Green speaking. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, and if you just announce your name so we know who you are.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. John Wood.
Thank you.
I wanted to introduce myself. I'm one of the founders, alongside my colleague John Green, with me, the proponent for this development, and also I was the founder of National Lifestyle Villages, which I established 22 years ago in WA. I actually sold that group about 3 years ago. I still work as an executive for them, but have recently founded Providence Lifestyle to continue to deliver this type of concept in WA. I just wanted to provide a short deputation and provide the opportunity to answer any questions if you have any. So over the last 25 years, I've been presenting somewhat innovative solutions in WA, providing affordable housing with high quality amenity for WA's ageing population. This came about because my background wasn't really in land development, nor was it in residential housing. It emerged because my family upbringing was in the caravan park industry, and my father introduced me to residential parks and manufactured home communities that had emerged to be a significant provider of housing in other parts of the world. And I've had the opportunity to see what worked around the world, and also significantly what's worked across the eastern seaboard of Australia. With that knowledge, I've worked closely with the WA Government to develop legislative solutions that provide security of tenure and high amenity, but delivers housing choice, which is 20 to 40% less expensive than the average median house price. The WA market is really warm to the solution, and we've got we've had about 5,000 people living in our communities developed in WA over the last couple of decades. Often local landowners are initially concerned with our projects being a potential neighbour because they have a preconceived idea or image of what will be developed. Ultimately, those concerns are quashed when they see the quality of the product, the entry statements, the facilities and the landscaping that we produce. Because we don't subdivide the land, we continue to act as a custodian for 60 years of our communities. We've been highly awarded due to our commitment to social and environmental sustainability. Our intention is that the Henley Brook Lifestyle Village
resort will deliver a 70% reduction in waste to landfill, an 80% reduction in energy consumption, and a 60% reduction in water consumption. There's also the retention and the addition of indigenous landscaping. We've retained most of the natural existing tree habitat, flora and fauna that's there as a natural resource to create a really stunning boulevard environment as the main entrance to the community. And as a point of reference, a more recent project in Vass, which didn't have trees on it, for a similar size parcel of land we would do sort of over 200 homes. And on this one, because of the environment that's there, we've limited it to 172 homes at the Henley Brook Resort. I would like to thank the staff for their support for getting this report up in time for today's agenda. It is quite time crucial for us. We've been working on it for about 3 years, and the land around the area, now that the infrastructure contributions have been sorted, seems to be hotly contested, and I want to honour the commitments I've made to the landowners and seek your support in seek your vote to support the officer's recommendations. There is a huge undersupply of senior housing north and east of Perth, specifically in the local area, and your approval will directly relieve this undersupply. I have brought with me just a bunch of 15 brochures which are just hard copy, so that you can see the quality of what we're proposing. It sort of demonstrates the housing, the facilities, the management demonstrated within this document, which is the more recent project that I'm doing in PR Waters, and Henley Brook is sort of coming under that same brand, where we're really wanting to up the ante and providing really cool places for people to live that feel like a playground and really take advantage of the environment that's in place already. So thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. Councillor Bowman, you had a question?
Will you be willing to commit to pay the DCP contributions?
Yes. We're part of the development of the area. We get the benefit of the whole area, so yeah, we think it's fair that we contribute to the area, and we'll probably have to enter into a deed with the city to support that if we're in advance of that being known. I've had to do that quite a few times because often I'm the first developer in an area, and we can negotiate a way so that we pay our fair share as council become more clear on what those contributions are. But I do think that pretty much resolved here, and we'll be paying our fair share of contributions.
And what's your tenure model that you'll have?
Each person, they own their own home, and they have a 60-year lease on the underlying land. And because most of our clients are on a fixed income or on a pension, that lease is linked to CPI plus 2%. So they can't have market reviews in the future that sort of makes it unaffordable for them.
Okay. Based on the information in front of me, and also notice that also comes under the Caravan and Camping Act, it would appear to me the development is not a lifestyle development, it's more like a trailer park development than a lifestyle village. Would that be a fair assumption?
No, it would be, unfortunately, a really wrong assumption, which is what generally people do, which is why I've brought these pretty pictures of what we'll be delivering at Henley Brook. Okay. It'll be an upmarket, high-quality resort, but the houses are more modest and, around sort of 60 to 80 square metres, 100 square metres, rather than a 300 square metre house.
Okay, so I don't go on pretty pictures, I go on facts and figures. Development is $5.5 million. That includes the internal roads, clubhouse, etc., and the 172 trailer park homes. If excluding the internal roads and the clubhouse, $5 million divided by 172 is only $29,000. I can't even buy a shipping container for $29,000 with a bed in it. So, help me work out how it's not going to be a trailer park if you're not even spending $29,000 per lifestyle village.
That's a really good question. The application is just for the civil component, so it's just to develop each site. There's a separate application and building licence that comes for the clubhouse facilities, which the clubhouse on its own is a little over $3 million. And the Houses, there'll be about $60 million worth of houses over the course of the development, and that will be part of the building licences and applications as it gets developed further.
Okay. And the other thing, I'm a little bit confused now because I've heard lifestyle, I've heard resort, I've heard senior housing, I've heard caravan parks, and I've heard age homes. But my understanding of lifestyle village, it can be for anybody. Is this going to be restricted to elderly?
No one's mentioned aged. It is for seniors over 50s. The legislation allows us to discriminate so that we make sure that there's no kids there, so people are around like-minded people. But if there is, we do have people in our communities that are less than 50, providing they don't have kids, and they would comply with the lease. But the average age in our communities is around sort of mid-60s, whereas the average age of a retirement village is typically mid-80s. So we're about 15 to 20 years younger, more of a playground than a waiting room.
Okay, and my final question, the consultants of the structure plan are the same consultants. How is it that on one hand, I would have thought the structure plan you're trying to improve the area, but in this one it seems like you're trying to reduce it. Can they work in tandem?
Sorry, what do you mean by reduce it?
Well, a trailer park is obviously, you said, it's not ideal. People don't like having a park village or a cheaper version of it close by. So when you're developing an area, you try and improve it, the prices go up. Will this not reduce those prices?
Our experience has been that we add value to the areas and we're a fantastic neighbour. And I'm just trying to, I guess that's why I mentioned, like, everyone thinks the opening scene of an American movie where someone gets shot is what we do. We do comply to the caravan park regulations, but it's so that we can offer a 60-year lease and not just keep subdividing the land and cut down the trees and actually add value to the community. So whilst it's governed under the Caravan Park regulations, we're also governed under the Residential Parks Long Stay Tenants Act, which is the relationship between the owner of each home and the landlord. And it's very highly regulated. We have to comply to licences and setbacks. But unless you go to one of our projects, and the closest one to here would be the Helena Valley Lifestyle Resort, which my colleague and I developed, they are very high amenity, but not everyone wants a three-bedroom house. They want to be able to downsize. A lot of people, after the kids have left home, they go through a divorce and they've only got half their asset. So in a community, I think we need to deliver diversity. Otherwise, you just keep getting what we've always got. And I think this actually adds value to the area. And that's why I brought this, so you could just see the quality. They are really resorts. They're not trailer parks.
So, Mr Mayor, I've just got questions of staff later.
Thank you. Councillor Howlett, you're next.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My question was of staff, so I can wait for that.
Okay, any more questions to the Deputy? Councillor Kiley first.
Through you, Mayor. John, I've just got a question. I've got a motion coming up in this agenda, and it relates to the roofing that we permit in the City of Swan, trying to reduce the heat effect. I note that you've got in the proposal Colorbond custom orb roof sheeting, Colorbond downpipe and gutters, and I like the images that you've provided. I'm just wondering whether you'd be willing to or consider changing to light colours or variations of light colours throughout, rather than the darker colours.
Yes, some of our communities where, for example, our Bridgewater community, where we won the National Bankshire Award, we just went with cream roofs on all of the houses. In this particular community, I'm hoping it will be the second solar community in WA. The first one is the one I'm doing in Piara Waters. That will be solar and battery storage, so that each pensioner that's living there, their power will actually be included in the rent they pay. And so we're really keen to try and innovate and reduce our environmental footprint. And it's a mix between the consumers wanting to have some choice, but we do have the ability to sort of put conditions in how we do it within the lease agreement. And if it means a one-colour roof, and that's really important to the council, then we could facilitate that.
Well, the motion refers to light colours, so there'd be still a choice, the range there, but I'm wondering if you're willing to accept that as an amendment to the approval.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Henderson, you are next.
Thank you. The question I have is around the density, and more importantly, you've got a whole bunch of trees near your entrance, but throughout the whole area, there's a lot of pavement, a lot of roofs, a lot of houses, but not that many trees. And the council's been quite, shall we say, hopeful that developers will put more trees in to make developments more green, more friendly and cooler. Have you considered doing that? Because this is very dense.
Yeah, so with the actual 3 properties have been farmed in the past. It's quite arid. Where there is the main density of trees is actually where we're putting the clubhouse, and through there. There are other trees which we've retained which were of significance that we've surveyed with our surveyor that we're retaining for pocket parks, but it is a more dense area, and there will be trees that will be demolished that we didn't incorporate in it. But what we've put forward is about the best we can do to make it sustainable and still have staff and enough houses to accommodate people living there. So the design that's put forward is about the best we could deliver from our perspective with our... because we don't like chopping down trees, but there's not many we're chopping down because it's quite an arid site already.
Sorry, I wasn't talking about chopping them down. I was talking about adding some.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Well, so all their streets will have street trees. We intensively landscaped every site, and so that will be part of further design refinement as we get down to detailed design if our application is supported.
Okay, I took the drawing and I didn't see a lot of that. Thank you.
No worries.
Councillor Knight, you are next.
Yeah, Councillor Henderson's asked a question. I was going to ask so.
Councillor Howard, do you have a question?
Thank you. Thank you for the brochure. As I looked through it, I sort of realised that there's a real lack of diversity in the pictures of the population that you have in there. The City of Swan is a very diverse, culturally diverse city. So, and people often look to see themselves in brochures to think about if this is the right place for them to live. And essentially, it's pretty one-dimensional. They're all white with grey hair. So I'm wondering, is there a plan to attract diversity into this lifestyle village, or is it one flavour?
Often the diversity is, it's hard to see the subtlety, but they're all skillion roofs. And so it provides a certain flavour because we build the homes off-site and transport them in 2 halves.
I think you've misunderstood the question.
So sorry, I meant the human population.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. I think there's a lot of diversity in the buildings, actually. There's quite a bit of choice there.
I'm sorry that I misunderstood.
That's all right, I'm sorry.
So from my perspective, the only requirement is that you don't have kids. So we have all flavours. We have disabled people. We have deaf and dumb people. We have all sorts of cultural people from all over the world. But it does tend to attract Europeans and Australians as a particular demographic, but that's mainly because a lot of people don't want to lease the land. They want to own their land, and so different cultures behave a little bit differently when we're offering a lease where there's, quite confined areas, and so I do find that it attracts a certain group of people and not others. Well, my mum lives in one and my wife's mum lives in another, so they're from Poland and they're from England.
Councillor Richardson, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question. I regularly visit the Pines Aged Care Facility in Ellenbrook, and I'm just curious, having a look at this lovely brochure, and also from a nursing perspective, I take into account there are many aged people who are over 55 or 60s in a large area like Ellenbrook. Recently driving in there the other day in a large full drive, I could not find a park to stop at the cafe and have a coffee. nor could I park in the facility, and I drove around 4 times looking for somewhere. So I eventually stopped in front of a resident's house or villa, and within 10 seconds of stopping in front of that house, did a lovely lady come out and let me know clearly that I could not park there. I would just like to know, having a look at this diagram, again, it's almost exactly the same, where there's 3 car park spaces for sedans near the pool. Where do people park when they come to visit? Because, as we know, people are quite angst about their property, their lawn verges. There is 0 parking in this diagram that you've just showed me in here. So if I want to go and visit my nana, my grandma, my auntie, whoever's here, a friend, a constituent, I can't park my car here anywhere, whether I had a small car or not. Those car park spaces taken up at the main information, or the main office, and the cafe, because these people all at home parked in their driveways and their car parks. They're in the driveway. There is nowhere for me to park. If I look at this map here, I'm just wondering if you might be able to tell me, where can I park a large four-wheel drive or my own private vehicle, please?
So, depending on whether you have 2 cars in the family or 1 car...
No, I'm talking about visitor car parking.
Yeah, so, depending on who's buying it, they've either got 1, 2 or 3 car bays on their site, like you've got a crossover so you can park in front of the carport or the garage. And then throughout the community there's dotted parking in around the parks throughout the community. Bearing in mind the one that you're looking at is the Piara Waters Resort development, not Henley Brook.
Do you have one for Henley Brook? Is it in here?
It's in the development application, sorry. But you'll see there's generally more parking where people are having social gatherings. So in the Central Park, in and around the clubhouse facilities, that's where there's additional parking. But I think our licence and our obligation under the Act is to provide, I think it's, in fact I can't remember, but it's either 10 or 20% of parking bays extra for every additional house. And so we just accommodate that parking throughout the community.
That seems still completely under-resourced for the amount of villa units that are in there. I think, did you say it was 25? About 25, but not anywhere near residents' houses.
Yes, without being next to you. So when we get into the detailed design, around the pocket parks, there is always extra parking that goes through the community so that you're relatively close to visit your mum or your dad or whoever you're coming to visit, or your friend. But it is not designed to be a parking space for everyone to be visiting at the same time. It would not be able to accommodate
I'm not
that.
talking about at most times, I'm just talking about just the odd occasion.
The project that you just referred to in Henley Brook, which is a retirement village, they are an older demographic. They don't have as many visitors, and they haven't. The roads are quite narrow. These particular streets are 6-metre roads, and each house has a crossover to their house, so you can park in front of the house that you're visiting. And they've got extra bays. They can choose. They can have 1 or 2 within the actual lot of their home. And in addition to that, we've got parking throughout the community, which is just random visitor parking, which is sort of part of the design of the community.
Thank you.
We don't really seem to have concerns around parking being of undersupply in our communities. But I do know the one you're referring to, which is a completely different design and quite tight.
Councillor Catalano, you're next.
Thanks. Could you just let me know, if you don't know it now, by email, how many mature trees you are going to be chopping down for this development?
Yes.
Okay, would you be able to email me those figures?
Yes.
And would you also, since you're going to do that, then also email me the species of the tree?
I don't know if I can do that straight away, because I need to get my arborist to do that for you.
Okay.
And that's probably
we've got till next Wednesday.
Well, I probably wouldn't start doing that unless I actually had a project that I could deliver, because I've got to pay them to do it.
You can tell me how many trees you think you're going to chop down?
Yes, of course.
Mature trees?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions of Mr Wood? Then I thank you for your deputation.
Thank you.
You also note, councillors, there's a written deputation by Ms Amity Smith and David Johnson. And now, any questions to staff? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to the staff, I'm a little bit confused. $5 million is the value, and hence the reason there's only $50,000 of public art. But I just heard there's $60 million to come for the homes and $3 million for the clubhouse. So, what's going on? Is it not supposed to be the whole application here? And I saw some pretty weird looks when those figures were raised before. So, perhaps if I could just have an explanation about why I'm so confused.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just saying to my colleague, Mr van der Linde, that I'm going to be speaking with Mr Wood tomorrow, because as I heard him, he suggested that the application cost didn't encompass all of the dwellings. He's seeking approval for all of the dwellings, and so I suspect I might have to have a conversation to work out whether the total cost of the development is indeed, as was discussed by yourself with Mr van der Linde and myself this morning, in fact greater than $5 million. And if that is the case, because what we are actually approving is the whole facility, the site, the clubhouse, the rest of it, the internal roads and the sites and the houses. Unless, of course, the proponent is of the understanding that subsequently they're applying for every single subsequent park home that they're proposing to construct through a planning application as opposed to a building permit. So there needs to be some clarity, which I will resolve, Mr Mayor, tomorrow with the applicant. And it may be that there needs to be a revision with respect to the estimated cost of the development.
Thank you for that, because my figure's now $68 million. The second question is the fact that it will be on one title. What is the impact of our rate income for those 172 park homes? I'll call them park homes now because they're going to be apparently worth $343,000, not $29,000. So what's the impact on our rates as if they were, compared to if they were 172 green title homes in the same spot? And I don't want an exact figure, but is it half, is it a quarter, is it 1/10, or is it even less?
Do you want to take that on notice, Ms Lay?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, you are next.
So the other question that follows from that is, are they effectively strata titled to be able to? I didn't think so, but how do we end up with getting a value for that? Thank you.
You have a question, Councillor Parry?
Yes, start to Mr Russell, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you.
How long will it take to get that information, Mr Russell, from the applicant? Basically, how much it was going to cost.
Conversation you're going to have tomorrow.
I intend to have that conversation with Mr Wood first thing tomorrow.
Would you wish to have a month deferral to get all the ducks in a row, or what would you like to do?
It may not be necessary, Mr Mayor, but that will be. I will report as soon as possible on that.
Thank
I
you.
may, if he needs time, I may do a deferral, Mr Mayor, so give
Thank
that
you.
notice if he needs the time.
Councillor Johnson, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I would have thought the applicant could explain how rates are paid on these properties. Could we ask him?
Well, you had the opportunity earlier.
Well, no, it's a valid, simple way to answer Councillor Bowman's question. So can we ask him now? Can we ask him now?
Mr Wood?
I just need John to answer because he's more on the operations. Thank you.
So all of our projects, we get charged rates. I can't tell you exactly what the comparison is because our density is different to what you'd normally have as a residential site, but on average we'd pay about $600 per home per year, roughly speaking.
And question is, who is the ratepayer then? Is it the homeowner?
It is us.
So
Yes.
you
we pay the rates.
You pay it's one rate bill for the entire
correct
park facility. Okay, thanks.
Yes. May I just quickly add, just for clarification, that in terms of the $60 million that Mr Wood was referring to, we are selling the homes, so we are not the homeowner. This is not part of our, the $60 million is paid by the people, not us, just for clarity.
Okay, well, I'm sure Mr Russell will take that. You have another question, Councillor Parry?
I just wish to note again, I'll raise a deferral if it is required to
If
ensure the numbers will
required,
be
yes.
correct.
Okay. Before we have our break at 8 o'clock, councillors, I've just been handed another disclosure of interest. It's by Councillor Howlett. It's in relation to item C 3.1, Community Care Service Review. It's an impartiality interest, as Councillor Howlett's a deputy member on the Swan Community Caring Committee. So I'll hand that to Mr Bishop. Being just after 8 o'clock, as we normally do, we're going to break for 10 minutes for a comfort break, councillors. So I'll see you back here at 15:15. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. The next item on the agenda is item 4. Thank you, councillors. Item 4.8, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and new replacement dwelling, Mears Street, Guildford. It's on page 476 of your agenda, and Mrs Michaela Treelin is giving a deputation. Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Good evening. My name is Michaela Treelin. This is my husband, Stephen. First of all, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present on our application for our new home in Guildford. We would like to thank the administration for its assessment and believe that we have worked collaboratively with the city since the lodgement of the application in October last year. As detailed in the council report, the proposal is entirely compliant with the overarching planning framework. It has, however, been deemed to have a non-compliant front setback as assessed against the Guildford Conservation Precinct policy. The Officer recommendation reflects this position in that it states, it is recommended that Council refuse the application due to the proposed setback, but to delegate the CEO authority to approve a revised application that achieves a minimum setback of 5.5 metres. We do respectively request that the Council reconsider this recommendation and alternatively approve the application in its current form, as we firmly believe that the proposed average street setback of 6 metres does not adversely impact the existing streetscape. I would like to provide some background to support this request. We designed our house over a 12-month period, carefully considering its design and presentation to the street, to ensure it met both our family needs as well as complying with the Guildford Heritage Design Guidelines and the Residential Design Codes. We also carefully considered the impact on the proposed dwelling on the surrounding properties, including visual and overshadowing aspects, and to ensure that our proposal was entirely compliant with the R codes. The planning application, following lodgement, was referred to the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, who supported the application as proposed and raised no objection to the proposed setbacks. Specifically, the Heritage Impact Assessment, prepared by our Heritage Architect, concluded that the proposed dwelling would have no discernible impact on the existing streetscape. In support of this request, we'd like you to consider the context of the entire street and surrounding area, including the setbacks of the immediate properties. A plan has been prepared to provide a visual demonstration of the surrounding context, including the existing streets. As noted in the officer's report, the setbacks of existing dwellings on Mears Street vary greatly. Although the existing dwellings north of the subject site are currently set back further than the proposed dwelling, we've ensured that our proposal is consistent with the R20 provisions of the GAR codes, having regard to the dwelling sited on Lot 3 to the north and the shed sited on Lot 5 to the south. The proposal provides an appropriate graduation of the front setbacks as demonstrated on the plan that has been circulated to councillors. You want to have that one there?
Which is this one here?
Yeah. Okay. The dwellings opposite the property on the west side of Mears front Market Street, with 32 Market Street having a rear setback of 1.5 metres. Therefore, the proposal has a negligible impact on this property. There is an existing double garage on the property at 32 Market Street with a parapet side boundary wall. The city is currently assessing an application for a new garage at 34 Market Street, which also proposes a parapet wall adjacent to the existing garage at 32 Market Street. This also has a 1.5 metre setback to Mears Street. The existing Mears Street verge is approximately 7 metres wide. In addition, no footpath exists along Mears Street, which clearly defines the lot from the verge. This further gives visual appearance of a greater setback to the street. We have met with the manager, Mr Phil Russell, to discuss his assessment of the front setback and had initially indicated that we could accommodate the additional 1.5 metre front setback. We've further considered this and we do not think it adds any meaningful benefit to the streetscape and the surrounding properties, nor is it consistent with the Guildford Conservation Precinct policy. The policy does not stipulate a specific setback, but indicates that regard should be given to the streetscape, which we firmly believe we have in this case. Furthermore, the current proposal is compliant with the R20 coding. We therefore request that the application is supported by Council as it is currently proposed. The siting of the proposed dwelling and its associated front setbacks do not have an adverse impact on the streetscape and have been carefully considered with regard to the surrounding varying setbacks.
You have
and
1 minute
existing
left, thank
development.
you.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, it's a very interesting house design, and it's when you bought your plot of land in Guildford, did you understand you were buying into a uniquely different heritage area? It's not
Yes.
just an ordinary suburb.
Definitely.
And so therefore there are going to be planning and design constraints that are not present in other suburbs.
We actually live in Woodbridge at the
Okay,
moment, so we're clearly aware of the
So I
situation.
understand.
Yep.
And just looking at the streetscape here on, I'm familiar with Mere Street, looking at Google Maps, it looks like number 2, number 4 and number 6 all have very, very similar setbacks, which are very similar to the rest of Guildford. So I guess the question I've got is this: if your setback, I understand, is 4 metres, is that
That's
right?
at the closest point.
Closest point.
The garage is 6.4 metres.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, can you not shuffle it back by 1.5 metres?
Well, if you have a look at that picture we've presented to you, we've actually got a shed that is almost on the boundary, which the property on the corner of Victoria... Sorry, it was an attachment as part of my deputation. I can see that one of the Councillor McCulloch's got it there.
Yep, got it.
So we provided that just to show that... that's the one. Sorry, again. Back.
On the top of that coloured...
That one there.
So it's on A4 there, ours is on A3.
Yeah. So it's a bit harder to see. But you can see we've got an existing shed on the corner of 54 Victoria Street, which fronts Mere Street, which has pretty much got a 0 setback to Mere Street. So it's really only at a certain point, you can see, we've tried to make it a gradual setback from our house to the adjoining property. So it's basically a median setback between the two properties.
When I look at the plans, so if I look at page 491 in the agenda, it looks to me like it would be relatively easy to either move the house back by 1.5 metres or move it back by a smaller amount and reduce the size of the office. I think it would be a reasonably easy thing to do, and the idea is to try to present a uniform... Do you see, we're trying to present a uniform street setback in Guildford. That's one of the objectives of the... certainly the new policy has that, and I'm pretty sure the old one, the current one, does as well.
It does, as I said, we were asking that you consider the whole context of the street, not just the 3 cottages to the north.
I understand.
Councillor Richardson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just curious, so when you submitted the detailed plans for the house, the fence detailed drawings weren't included. I'm just wondering when you'll have a detailed drawing of those.
No, they are.
Oh, sorry.
On the elevations.
In this one here.
The elevations there.
And then, what is the material that
It's brick.
Fence? Sorry,
Brick.
It will
Red
be brick
to match the house. Yes.
And what are the infill panels? Those
would be the metal.
They're metal.
Yeah, open aspect fencing, metal.
So in the Guildford Conservation Policy and the current draft policy, it has a diagram that shows the 3 different types of fencing. It was applicable to my property, which is also being questioned at the moment. And I'm just interested to know if you looked at the policy and looked at those 3 particular styles of fencing?
Not the new policy, no, because
Right.
It hasn't been.
So
yeah.
that diagram, to me, doesn't represent the 3 fencing styles that are in the policy, and I'm just wondering if you'd considered that as part of the design.
well, I believe it complies with the current policy.
Question to staff?
We'll make sure we've got no more questions for the applicants
Thanks.
first. Any other questions, councillors? Then thank you for your time and your deputation. You've got a council staff question, Councillor
Thank you.
Richardson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's to Mr Russell. Just in regard to the fence infill panels, can you tell me if that complies with the Guildford Conservation Policy, with that style?
Through you, Mr Mayor, take you to page 485 of the agenda, front fencing. Okay, and it says here in relation to the current policy that the fencing is to match the style of the dwelling. So the site at the moment and the dwelling on the lot has no front fencing. But the nature of the form and materials of the proposed fence, particularly being predominantly of brick here and with metal panel infill, matches the proposed materials of the new dwelling, being of brick and of Colorbond. So with respect to the current policy provisions that the house should match, or the front fence should match the style and material of the house, being a new house, it matches.
Policy or the draft policy?
This is the current policy.
That's what it says in the report. Yeah.
And true, Mr Mayor, to finish, the new draft policy doesn't quite articulate, at least from my review of it, writing this up, doesn't quite articulate the same level of prescription of the fence matching in with the house under the new draft policy. So the new draft policy provisions there speak mostly about the height and the rest of it, but and we're happy, at least the assessment is that it meets the new draft policy, but the salient point here is that we're assessing this as we must against the current policy, and it clearly complies with the current policy.
Further question
Yes,
to Mr
Councillor
Russell.
Richardson.
Mr Russell, the current draft policy and then the revised policy, I had a look at about a month or so ago when it was presented to Council in our spiral bound book, gives 3 examples of fences, and those 3 are brick, or brick with full brick, or brick with infill pickets, as was specified for my own property, or picket fence. And I'm just not sure where this particular picture and design falls into those exact 3 pictures that was put into our council spiral bound book. Can you please
Sorry,
explain?
Mr Mayor, are we talking about, we need to be very clear here, are we talking about the current policy or are we talking about the proposed draft policy?
The proposed draft policy had 3 pictures of 3 defined fences, and it was also applicable to a development application recently that's now questionable in a SAT decision, how this particular fence could be considered part of that policy.
Mr Mayor, I think we have to be very careful here that we don't conflate 2 separate proposals, and I'll say again for clarity here. This proposed fence complies with the current policy, and the current policy is the totality of what this council needs to consider this application against. It will be making an error if it starts applying the new draft policy. Now, and we don't need to make any reference with any proceedings on other matters, on other applications in other jurisdictions when we deal with this.
Thank you. I think that was very clear. Any other questions, councillors? Then that takes us to the next item, it's item 4.9, proposed front fence in Stephen Street, Guildford. It's on page 522 of your agenda. I have Miss Jessica Christina speaking. Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes once you start.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Jess Christina, and I'm here to present a deputation on behalf of myself and my husband, Thomas Christina, related to agenda item 4.9, proposed front fence, lot 21, number 6A, Stephen Street, Guildford. We are the owners and occupiers of this address. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to present our deputation regarding the pending decision from Council in relation to our proposed front fence. We recognise and highly value the historical significance of our town of Guildford and wish to maintain its integrity whilst also ensuring we have a usable and safe environment in which to bring up our children. I'm here to object to the recommendations provided to you to refuse our application for our proposed front fence based on its proposed height of 1.7 metres as opposed to the preferred 1.2 metres. We have proposed a Windsor-style timber picket fence in white with a concave sash style as per the drawing you have attached in your agendas. We object to the recommendation to refuse our planning request on 3 grounds specifically. Firstly, there is demonstrated precedent on our street of fences that are of our proposed height or higher. Secondly, we understand that a fence height of 1.2 metres is insufficient to ensure the safety of our young children in the context of the proximity of our front door to the road. And thirdly, we wish to demonstrate our commitment to maintaining the heritage nature of the area and believe that rather than taking away, we are indeed adding to the streetscape. And we have ensured this through a thorough and respectful planning of our proposed fence design. First of all, the precedent. There are numerous residences on Stephen Street in Guildford which demonstrate a fence height of 1.7 metres or taller. These include number 4, 6, 8, 10 and 14. Therefore, the recommendations from the officers and the Heritage Council to refuse our application on these grounds are inconsistent with what is already present on our street. As you will see from the planning drawing available in your agendas, our proposed fence is not a consistent height, but rather a concave sash shape, where it ranges from 1.5 metres in the middle to 1.7 on the edge of the sashes. This allows for greater visibility through to the property and better maintenance of the heritage streetscape. Furthermore, there are fences that are taller than our proposed fence height on our street, which are a single block height, providing less visibility to the residences than our proposed fence, and these have presumably been approved through the council process. On consultation by myself with numerous neighbours in our street, all that I spoke to have agreed that our design will significantly enhance the Stephen Street streetscape, and we're excited by the attached proposal. Based on the precedent established on our street, we wish for a fair decision to be made with the consideration that our proposal was modelled from our neighbouring properties, and we request an equal opportunity to erect a fence of this height and style. The second matter is of safety. Due to the age and nature of the residences on the even side of Stephen Street, where we are located, there is very little distance between the front of each residence and the road. On our block specifically, we only have 1.9 metres from the front fence to the edge of the road, and only 2.5 metres from the front porch to the front fence. As such, there is very, very little protection by nature of distance to safeguard our young children from getting to the edge of the road if they were able to scale the front fence. Western Australian legislation in relation to pool fences state that if a fence to a pool area resides on a boundary, it must measure a minimum of 1.8 metres. Additionally, any latch or door handle leading into a pool area must be a minimum of 1.5 metres high, limiting a child's access to the unsafe environment. We wish to comply with these recommendations as closely as possible on the basis that a road such as Stephen Street, in such close proximity to our front door, is just as dangerous for our children as an unattended swimming pool. We fear that if we were required to build to the lower fence height of 1.2 metres on a slightly sloping block, with the nature of the fence construction rendering it potentially climbable, it could enable our children to easily step out onto the road. A fence height of 1.7 metres, whilst not overly significant in relation to numbers, is significant in regards to our children's safety, our peace of mind and our family quality of life. It will allow us to be 100% confident that our children are safe in their home environment.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
And prevent any tragic accidents given the unchangeable location of the house on the block. We'd also like to highlight our careful consideration of the heritage area in our design. We worked hard to develop a fence design that closely considered the heritage nature of the area and used the recommendations from the local planning policy for the Guildford Conservation Precinct to ensure this, whilst also considering our previously mentioned concerns. Further evidence of our high level of consideration is the Heritage Council's acceptance of all other aspects of our fence design. This includes the Windsor-style pickets, the carefully chosen post capitals, carefully chosen vehicle and pedestrian gates, and all in the colour white. Given the age and type of property we own, a cottage built in 1918, both ourselves and the Heritage Council felt that the style proposed would best suit the residents. So with this in mind, we thank you for your consideration of this deputation in relation to our new front fence. We hope that in your decision making you will allow us to proceed with the front fence as proposed and allow us the opportunity to construct a new, respectful and safe front boundary fence that will be a credit to the Stephen Street streetscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Christina, I guess somewhat what you're saying is that it's a safe fence, it's a heritage-style fence, and it's similar in height to other people's fences in the street.
Exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Then thank you for your attendance and your deputation. Takes us to the next item, councillors. Item 411, proposed demolition of a single house and removal of native vegetation in Fauntleroy Street, Guildford. It's on page 566, and the first speaker on this item will be Mr. Cameron Leckie. We did have Miss Christine Hughes, but she had to leave for other reasons, so Mr. Leckie will be now the first presenter. Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Cameron Leckie from Rise Urban. I represent the landowner of the 2 lots that form number 7 Fauntleroy Street, and we're the applicants of the current demolition application. I'll try and be as brief as we can because we fully accept the officer's recommendation. As pointed out in the report, number 7 Fauntleroy Street comprises of 2 separate lots. It's been this way since the lots were first created in 1906. Other than the existing dwelling that straddles the boundary of the 2 lots, there's nothing that physically or legally ties the 2 together. My client acquired both properties in 2019 with a view to amalgamating the lots and developing a small childcare centre on the combined site. From his perspective, the site was ideally sized and located to accommodate such a use. However, as you might recall, the council saw this differently, as is their right, and opted to refuse the application on the basis of insufficient car parking being provided on the site. As part of the city's assessment of this previous application, matters relating to demolition and heritage were thoroughly addressed, and although the car parking shortfall was not supported by the council, the principle of demolition and redevelopment of the site was. Unfortunately, and despite my client's best efforts, he could not produce a childcare proposal that met the city's requirements whilst also remaining a feasible development, and he's now accepted the council's decision to not allow the childcare centre in this location. He's since decided to move on and sell the 2 lots and use the proceeds to source an alternative site for a childcare centre development that might be more suitable. The challenge with selling the 2 lots is that the existing dwelling straddles the boundary between the 2, making the separate sale of them impossible without first demolishing the dwelling. Unfortunately, my client has found that the pool of buyers looking for 1,500 square metres or more of residential land in Guildford is quite small, whereas 2 750 square metre lots is within reach of a lot more potential buyers and therefore provides them with a clearer exit strategy out of the property. Hence the application to demolish the dwelling. The application goes into a lot of detail as to the heritage considerations of the proposal, and the key points for you to note are, firstly, that the dwelling has been extensively modified over many years to the point that the original fabric is either completely gone or is almost unrecognisable. Secondly, the original portions of the house that do remain are in such poor condition that it's structurally irredeemable, and any redevelopment of the original house would most likely require the complete removal and replacement of the original structures to meet the modern building standards. Thirdly, overall the entire dwelling is in very poor condition. It's sat vacant and neglected for more than 10 years before my client acquired it in 2019. The dwelling does not appear on any heritage inventories or lists, and it's not defined as a heritage building under the city's local planning policy. The house does not make any contribution to the streetscape given its setback of around 40 metres from the street and the extensive mature trees which screen it from view. The Fauntleroy Street streetscape is of a low value from a heritage perspective, with almost all of the properties having been completely redeveloped at some point in the 80s or 90s. The Heritage Council of WA has supported this view and confirmed that the dwelling does not contribute to the heritage character of the area and supports the demolition. And lastly, the proposal is entirely consistent with the objectives and requirements of the city's current Guildford Conservation Precinct planning policy. In relation to the vegetation and the flooded gums in particular, we're accepting of the city's view that the trees, although showing some signs of poor health and potential failure, are not an immediate threat, and should be retained for the time being. My client's original childcare centre proposal included...
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Included retention of a number of these trees, and any other future development of the 2 lots by the new owners in the future should also take this into consideration. In closing, we ask that the Council support the officer's recommendation and allow my client to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks very much, Cameron, for that deputation. I had a quick read through the deputation that you sent through. I'm quite interested in the second to last paragraph that states, point 3, the extent to which the community would benefit from the proposed redevelopment. Can you tell me, you've written here, the home has been vacant for approximately 15 years. I believe that's quite untrue, considering I spoke to the owners 3 years ago before they sold it. Can you tell me how that's possible?
Look, I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I may have misunderstood.
I know the people.
Been given the look, I'm happy to.
It's just that when a company puts together a report, so my question is where this information came from. So that's completely incorrect based on Griffiths Architects' report. Was it by Rise Urban, or was that from Griffiths, that particular fact?
That came from the Griffiths report, I believe. Yeah.
So that's completely unfactual. That family lived there 3 years ago until it was sold and moved out, and it had been owned by previous generations. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that when we do receive a report written by Griffiths Architects, who are renowned for their heritage reports, that is factually incorrect. That there was a family living there and did so up until the point that it was sold, and it belonged to the grandparent of the granddaughter who was living there.
Sure. Okay, well, I apologise, I wasn't aware of that. So.
And that it wasn't uninhabitable.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Prodovnik is first. Can you hear me, Councillor Prodovnik?
Yeah, I can, but my question was in relation to the line ash issue. I think that was 4.4, someone who came to chat from Element. But look, I'd rather just get their name and just give them a call tomorrow. I just think that we're going to got a lot of material to get through tonight, so it's not urgent. I can talk to them tomorrow.
That's fine. 4.4 was an hour or so ago, so if you contact Mr Russell in the morning, he'll provide you the name you need. Councillor Johnson, you're next on this item.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor, and I can concur. I recall somebody living there 3 years ago, and I recall the former owner who lived there. I think he lived in the house for many years, at least 30 or 40 years. Look, can you, I don't know if you've got the agenda there, maybe you don't, but if you look on page 589, councillors, what you'll see is the top photograph, 33. I'm asking a question. Do you have a copy of the agenda?
I'm sorry, no, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, if you could.
Thank you.
So what you can see there on page 33, I'm not going to draw your attention to the curtains, but I'm drawing your attention to the ceiling. So the ceiling's clearly been recently replaced. So that's a ceiling replacement job. So what it indicates is that the former owner was maintaining the place. And the second question is, if you look at page 34, photograph 34 on page 589, you'll see it says showing existing fireplace and mantel. Does that look like an original heritage fireplace to you?
With respect and through the Mayor, Council, I'm not the heritage architect that prepared this report. And look, I'm not in a position to comment on that.
Yeah, I understand, but you're presenting this as a house in very bad condition when it was lived in as recently as 3 years ago. And what I'm trying to say is this photograph, so the photograph of Ground 34, it's not exactly presenting that room in the best possible light. It looks as though things have just been scattered there to make it look like it's a derelict house when it was lived in by a family not so very long ago.
I think the gentleman said he can't answer because he didn't take the photographs, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, that's true. And if you look at photograph 27, it appears to be in quite good condition, the Western Skillion edition. So, what I would say is put to you that the photographs here have been taken in an attempt to show the house in a poor light. You haven't shown a picture of the house followed. It is actually quite a nice house. So, what's your evidence that the structure of the house is in poor condition? Because it actually looks in poor decorative order, but the actual structure of the house looks quite good to me.
Well, through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor, I've taken the advice of the heritage expert, who's a eminently respected and qualified heritage architect, probably one of the most respected in Western Australia, who's formed the view that the house is structurally irredeemable and that the fabric that is there that's original, and which isn't very much of it, I'm told, is in very poor condition.
So I guess the next question is, would it, given that the various Guildford heritage policies all favour retaining houses, and the new one does favour demolition, the only reason for demolishing this house surely is just pure economic gain. Would it not be better to let another owner buy the two lots and restore their house?
Councillor, if there was an owner out there that was willing to do that, then the block's been on the market now for many months, and there's been little to no interest that I'm aware of. And in turn, I guess, speaking frankly, my client just doesn't have the means to do it himself, and needs if he can't subdivide if he can't dispose of the two lots, then what is he expected to do?
Well, I guess I'm asking the question is, well, could he not reduce the price to meet the market?
Would you, councillor?
Well, that's what I would do if I was trying to sell something.
Yeah.
That's how the free market works.
It's not a question I don't think the presenter can present. Councillor Richardson, you are next.
Thank you. So I wasn't aware that you hadn't actually been to the property. Sorry. So that was part of my line of part of the questioning.
No, that's fine.
So my other questions will be irrelevant then. If it was Griffiths Architects, who actually did attend the property?
I believe it was Mr. Griffiths himself with one of his architects.
Who, sorry?
Mr. Griffiths himself, Philip Griffiths.
Okay.
And one of his staff and the owner.
Any other questions, councillors? No other questions, and I thank you for your time, Mr. Leckie, and you'll note that there's also a written deputation from Mr. Leckie.
Thank you very much.
An alternate motion for this one.
Thank you. Did you get that, Megan? You torn your motion. Next item is item 4.13, existing filling of land and changes to topography, Liberté Crescent, Baskerville, and have in-person deputation by Mr. Mike Marsh. Thank you, Mr. Marsh. You have 5 minutes from when you start talking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councillors. The first point I wish to make is that the consultation process with respect to this proposal was, in my view, far less than adequate. The letter of advice to neighbours was dated the 20th of December and had a response date by the 11th of January. Now, as you all know, we do other things over Christmas and New Year rather than consider proposals for drains and constructions and the likes. In addition to that, the Post Office, as we all know, is a little bit busy at that time of the year. So there is a very high risk that the advice is not received by the neighbours until well after the Christmas break. So I would like to draw your attention to the poor consultation process, particularly as I could compare it to a proposal from an adjoining landholder who wanted a shed outside their building envelope. That letter was dated early December with a response late January. So we have a comparison of 22 days to something like 7 weeks, and I wonder why the difference. The second point I wish to make is that some 10 years or so back, we spent many tens of thousands of dollars preparing a structure plan according to the requirements of this council. That structure plan, the Joshua Mews structure plan, in its statutory section, clearly shows a building envelope requirement of 900 square metres and a setback of 20 metres. Now, back in March, this council approved a building envelope for that site, this site we're talking about here, of 3,964 square metres. The basis of this decision was that the council was advised that there was a gravel pit there which had an area of 3,964 square metres. Subsequently, it's been established that the idea of the gravel pit is a fabrication. There was never a gravel pit there, and that has now been admitted by the officers of the council. So, the rules require 900 square metre building envelope, currently approved at just under 4,000, and a 20 metre setback, based on a fabrication. Now, my position is that in 4,000 square metres, they should be able to accommodate the additional works, particularly as they should be able to do it in 900 square metres. In addition, the additional works that are proposed, well, the additional works that have already started, will impinge about 5.5 metres into the 20 metre setback. So, two rules set up by the structure plan: 900 square metre building envelope, 20 metre setback. Current situation, proposed about 4,400 square metre building envelope and a 14 to 15 metre setback.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Why do that? Now, my last point is that I wonder why we have a council who's here to make decisions and rules. Now, I know it's important you should trust the officers, but sometimes you've got to be applying a little bit of intellectual grunt into the process. This particular property is now on their 5th retrospective approval. 5 that, to my knowledge. There was a quarry, there was a living quarters in a shed, there was version 1 of a building envelope, of a building pad, version 2 of a pad, and now this one where works started in July, despite in March this council telling the proponents that they needed to seek your approval before any additional works. So I would suggest the proponent has no respect for this council. In March you say any further works must be approved. In July they start further works without approval. Luckily for them, they've got Phil to run around and get the paperwork
Have you got
together.
long to go, Mr Marsh, because you've had 5.5 minutes so far?
Right. I'm nearly finished anyway, but think
if you
about
can
it.
start wrapping it up, thank you, be appreciated.
Just think about the process where 5 retrospective approvals, on the 4th time they're told, make sure you get the works approved. 4 months later, they do the same thing again. So I would suggest the proponent has no respect for this council. Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Catalano first.
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering, like, are you an adjacent landowner? Yes. So the infill of this land, how is that going to affect your property?
It's not so much a direct effect on my property, so much as the whole structure. Right when the plan... Let's put it this way. I helped the guy that was living there before he died. I helped him work out how things would be done. I helped him hold the tape measure. I used my geological experience to find where there was some gravel. But he was planning on building a pile of rocks 7 metres high. In terms of the area scape, it looks like just a huge pile of rocks. It doesn't fit with the style that's used throughout the locality. And right up front, when he told me what he was planning to do, I said I would never agree to it. and I still don't agree with it. I still think it's a pile of rocks. By comparison, I spend my life trying to get rid of the rocks. So, yeah, contrary views.
And
the impact it has is primarily on the landscape as a totality. Now, I mean, put it in comparison, everybody else has to limit their retaining walls that they do oftentimes with rocks to 2.5 metres. This particular structure is 7.5 metres. Now, think of it, this is about, what, 3.5, double that, double the height of this room is what we're talking about.
so there's not going to be any water flowing from that infill onto your block? Or is it going to affect the hydrology at all?
It's on top of the hill.
Yeah, I know, but the way the water flows, the way the water flows,
Sorry?
the way the water flows down the hill.
It flows downhill. We're on the other side of the hill.
Oh, you're uphill, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what do you think the impact is on the person at the bottom of that block?
Well, there's obviously a water drainage problem, but that's not the problem really. The biggest problem is the blight it is on the landscape.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Howlett.
My question was for staff. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr Marsh? Then I thank you for your attendance and your deputation. Councillor Howlett, you've got a question for staff.
Thank you. It's through you, Mr Mayor. Mr Marsh raised the issue of the advertising period comparable 7 weeks to 22 days. Is there a consistency that these things go out to public comment for in advertising periods?
Thank you, Mr Russell.
Through Mr Mayor, what Mr Marsh has alleged is that the time frame for the consultation on this application was not consistent with the time frame on another application put out at about the same time. I would need to investigate that to determine whether that is the case, and if so, what their reasons might be. So I can't say here tonight whether in fact it's true that there is an inconsistency in the process.
So we'll take it on notice and get back to all councillors. Thank you, Mr Russell. Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Mr Russell, with the infill, how's that going to impact on the flow of water down the hill and onto the adjacent properties? Is there going to be any impact?
Through Mr Mayor, in short, no. There's the filling in of a minor dip on the northern side of these, we'll call them building pads. That's the purpose of the fill, and to the extent that it might channel any water, it will be channeling the water within this site.
Any other questions, councillors? Then we'll move on to the next item. That's item 4.14, existing service station associated signage, Kalamunda Road, South Guildford. It's on page 616. There's only a written deputation by Ms Renee Young. Any staff questions on that, councillors? And Councillor Kiley.
Through you, Mayor, just the provision of a leach drain outside of the property boundary. Can I have some explanation of how that can occur?
Mr Russell's referring to the report. Do you want to take that on notice, Mr Russell?
With respect, Mayor, to Mr Russell, the property boundary is shown on that page 629 as a dotted line. It's got it's highlighted as a dotted line through there. It's clearly metres outside of the property boundary.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, the next item, item 4.15, proposed carport Barabin Place in Ballajura. I've been advised that the person giving the deputation has left. Is Miss Milka Jakovsky here, or anyone speaking to that item? No. Then we'll go to the next one, which is Part C. Item C 1.3. It's Henley Brook Avenue Extension. It's on page 984, and the first in-person deputation is by Ms. Jan Zek. You're leaving the chamber, Councillor Henderson. You've declared an interest. Thank you. Once you start speaking, Jan, you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Planners in the past have made devastating decisions about this area. Despite being repeatedly warned about the consequences, they were told that enormous amounts of fill would be required. Guesstimated to cost $135 million in 1993, it quickly climbed to $270 million. That equates to about $500 million in today's terms. Locals warned that large populations of kangaroos lived in the area. Nothing was done for 30 years. Then it became a nightmare. Drivers killing numerous kangaroos, authorities scrambling to find a solution, all under media security with locals baying for blood. Despite locals, experts and media forewarning the risk of these new suburbs becoming uninhabitable into the future due to climate change, huge tracts of land have been cleared of vegetation, and in its place a massive urban heat island has been created. Now this summer, 17 days of 40 degrees or more, 2 stretches of 6 excruciatingly hot days. The hottest are searing 44.5 degrees. We are well on the way to the catastrophic conditions which made news headlines for the southwest suburbs of Sydney, where temperatures reach blistering highs of over 50 degrees. Despite state and local government policies about responsible planning, sustainability, urban forests, bush forever sites and all the other feel-good language which surrounds these useless tomes of ineffectual measures, for us, our businesses, the economy and the environment, nothing changes. We are now slaves to past decision-making and practices without a skerrick of conscience as to whether they are good or bad. Henley Brook Avenue is the result of a directive dating back to the earliest iterations of the North East Corridor, a desire or a belief that these residents would flock to Midland, bolstering its status as a regional centre. At the time, the community were against it, and the majority have continued to be, for reasons we have consistently raised. The overwhelming majority of inhabitants of this area go west and southwest, not to Midland. The route cuts through the Bush Forever Site 200 and will have devastating consequences for the survival of the bushland and the native flora and fauna, and it will be ruinous to the rural character and success of the Swan Valley. There is now less justification for Henley Brook Avenue to travel to the southeast, despite the railway to Ellenbrook, the extension of Tonkin Highway and the creation of Drumpellier Drive, despite the development of Ellenbrook as a major centre in its own right, despite Ellenbrook North, with the promise of extensive employment opportunities in the planned industrial precincts, it persists. What is the cost of this road? Not only in monetary terms, but economic damage to the Swan Valley and the environmental destruction to the Bush Forever site. The planning that was done in the 1990s has been superseded by successive planning resolutions and radically changing views about the value of our natural environment. If something isn't done to remedy the situation now, Henley Brook Avenue will be locked in because the decision-making process has overrun the development of other roads. Because the decision-making process has been overrun by the development of other roadworks being planned. Henley Brook Avenue is one of the few features in this urban landscape we can influence at this state.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Please, don't let it be another albatross the City of Swan must endure for many decades to come, and a price too high. Councillor Carley's motion is to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, I'll call for the next speaker on the same subject, Ms Cheryl Rogers. Thank you, Cheryl. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Edwards, Mr Mayor and councillors. And I'd like to extend special thanks to those of you who have taken up the invitation to take a tour to view the facts about this section of road, and also those of you who've booked. The invitation remains because I very firmly believe that if you're going to be voting on this, particularly those of you outside the Swan Valley ward, you need to see you need to appreciate the implications. I fully support the motion. You will see from the figure 1 that I supplied that my land south of Harrow Street provides direct evidence of the conflict that exists between the MRS and the Swan Valley Planning Act 2020. This proposed road rips right through land zoned priority agriculture, through the very land the new State Government Act is meant to protect. This is not a City of Swan battle. I suggest you don't waste your time and resources, don't risk the city's reputation, throw it back to the Minister. Let her make the decision. The question then will be, will Minister Saffioti honour her new Swan Valley Planning Act, or will she sanction a 4-lane road ripping through protected farmland that's zoned priority agriculture, heading blindly on its way towards a primary school drop-off and pick-up zone, a school with 530 pupils, 530 young children. The city doesn't need to risk its reputation here. It's a state government issue. It's the Minister's Act. It's the Minister's road. Make it her call. I urge you, first of all, to take the tour if you haven't already, and I also urge you to support Councillor Kiley's motion. Now, for the benefit of any new councillors, and also to refresh the memories of those who were here on March the 10th, 2021, at the Agenda Forum, in the notes on page 10, it states, "It was noted during the deputations that planning control for the road is with the WAPC. If you need to check the primary evidence of that discussion, it's, I think, at around 1 hour, 6 minutes. And that came about because there was confusion, even amongst staff, I understand, that Henley Brook Avenue is a City of Swan road. The route is the responsibility of the state government." Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Okay, none to Ms Rogers. Thank you, Cheryl, for your deputation. Councillor Kiley.
Through you, Mayor, just looking for clarification around the responsibility for the road on 2 issues, ensuring it goes ahead and who actually pays for it or how it is funded. Thank you.
Mr Coaten.
Well, the planning for the road, it's a blue road in the MRS, so set by the state government. The actual funding for the construction of the road would be the responsibility of the City of Swan, notwithstanding that a number of contributions, some of the funding has come from developer contributions from subdivisions in the area.
And just to follow up there, that if it was rejected, the road, it would be possible to refund the DCP contributions, I understand. Is that correct?
Ms Lay.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that would need to be considered as part of an annual cost review and actually detailed to a great degree to actually assess whether funds can be redistributed to other infrastructure or, in fact, the city would have to return those funds.
Any other questions, councillor? Councillor Catalano.
What kind of what were the DCPs for? Which suburbs?
Mr. Russell, is it you?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't catch that.
And you just repeat the question, thank you.
Yeah, the DCP money that's gone into the reserve for the Henley Brook, that part of Henley Brook south of Yuildene, where did that money come from?
Mr.
Mayor, I may answer that. For this section in Dayton, the Dayton developers pay the contributions towards the section of Henley Brook south after Bush Forever, and the section north of the Bush Forever site, south of Park Street, is for the developers in Brabham. So it's that money is paid into the DCP for the Brabham area.
Okay, and just also, will the road, Mr. Coaten, I guess, the road will be a City of Swan road?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. And it will be designed and planned by Main Roads, just like we had with Lloyd Street Bridge. Is that what the sort of setup is?
No, this is being the cities would organise the design of this. You may recall at the previous meeting there was a concept design that was presented to council.
Okay, so the city's designed it and the city will be constructing it. And it's a City of Swan owned road, so they'll be maintaining it into the future.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley?
Just to clarify that point, though, the decision to proceed with the road would be the minister's decision. Is that correct?
Mr. Coaten?
Well, the timing for the construction of it would be the city's decision. A decision to remove it from the Metropolitan Region scheme would be the minister's decision.
Do you have a question, Councillor Bowman?
I'm going to ask, we were doing so well for an hour, can we actually hear the other two deputations before we ask questions, please?
Well, we're going to hear the next deputation because there's no more questions of staff, but I'll take your point on board, Councillor Bowman. Next speaker is Mr. Humphrey Bugart from the Swan Valley Ratepayers and Residents Association. Thank you, Humphrey. You have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Yeah, the Swan Valley Ratepayers and Residents Association fully supports the motion from Councillor Kiley to direct the CEO to advise the Minister of Transport that the Council proposed section of the Henley Brook Avenue from Yuildene to Reed Highway will be no longer needed. Request the Minister to ensure that the Metropolitan Regional Scheme is amended by removing this proposed road from Yuildene to Reed Highway. And the last is to request the Minister to instruct Main Roads to change the design for the intersection between West Swan Road, Reed Highway. The reasons for the request from our point of view is that the proposed Henley Brook Avenue would result in significant negative interference with the tourist flow along at the Reed Highway intersection, and will have accordingly a very bad influence on the businesses in the Swan Valley. And also there is a conflict between the Metropolitan Regional Scheme and the Swan Valley Planning Act because there are part of the road is not compliant basically with the purpose of the Act. For these reasons the Minister should make a decision. The Swan Valley Ratepayers and Residents Association asks all councillors to support the motion by voting in favour of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll hear from the next presenter, Mr. Alan G'day from the Swan Valley Tourism Alliance. Thank you, Elaine. You have 5 minutes once you start speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, staff, thank you for allowing me to take the opportunity to present our deputation to this agenda item. I'll be very brief because I'll be repeating a lot of the sentiments that's already been proposed. But councillors, the MRS and the Swan Valley Planning Act 2020 are both instruments of the state government. It is evident that the MRS and the objectives of the Act are in conflict. These objectives are attached to this deputation for you to be able to have a look at your leisure. It's been emailed to everyone, so I'm sure that you all got the copy. This conflict can only be resolved by the ministers responsible. The SVTA...
Sorry, Elaine, can I just ask you to pull your mask up to cover your nose?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It fogs my glasses. The SVTO supports the removal of the proposed section of Handybrook Avenue between Yuildene Road and Reed Highway from the MRS in order for the Minister to resolve this conflict. The SVTA wholly support Councillor Kylie's motion in relation to Handybrook Avenue extension and seeks the support of the Council to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr G'day?
Questions of staff?
Yes, well, no questions for the Deputy, so thank you. Councillor Catalano, did you have a question of staff? No. No? Okay, Councillor Congdon, you're next then.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to refer you to page 984 of the report, and I'd like the staff to give me some advice on the ordinary meeting of Council on the 17th of March. It was resolved to put on hold all works and land resumptions in relation to Henley Brook Avenue south of Park Street with the exception of traffic modelling, and then immediately contact the Minister for Transport Planning and for confirmation, and it goes on and on and on and on. So my question is, does this resolution being proposed by Councillor Kylie override that resolution which has been enacted but hasn't come back to Council yet?
Miss Albrecht, when you're ready.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I think that if the Council voted to support the motion put forward by Councillor Kylie, that would replace the existing Council resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Parry.
This is to Mr Coden, if that's okay, Mr Mayor. I note the paragraph where it says traffic modelling will be completed by the end of 21-22 financial year, provided the inputs for the modelling are received from Main Roads prior to early April 22. Is that still on target, Mr Coden? To your best of your knowledge, of course.
Well, it is on the basis that we haven't reached early April 2022.
Yep.
So, as far as I'm aware, we haven't received them, unless we've received them in the last few days, but I think I would have been made aware if we had received them, but I don't think we have received them yet, but we will need to receive them shortly in order to meet that deadline.
There's been no indication that they won't hit the target, though?
Oh, they haven't given us an indication that they wouldn't, no.
And just a follow-up question, if you don't mind, as well, Mr Mayor. It notes, my memory's a bit fuzzy about the March 21 meeting. I swear there was an amendment made by the motion. The words "with the exception of traffic modelling" at the end of Part 1. Who raised that amendment, please?
I think we'll have to take that on notice and we'll get back to you.
I think it was Councillor Kylie, actually, Mr Mayor. So
over
12 months we haven't seen any. That's the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, have you got a question?
I have got a question. Yes, I'd just like to ask Mr Coton if he wouldn't mind contacting, so it must be, who is doing the traffic modelling? Is that Main Roads? Who's doing that traffic modelling? Or are they consultants?
Yeah, we've got a consultant doing it, but we require input from the Main Roads.
Do you mind contacting them and finding out if they're going to actually have that report to us on time before the meeting? Would that be possible?
Well, if subject to receiving the information from Main Roads in early 2022, we will have it on time.
Okay, so you won't need to ask. You think you're going to get it on time?
He's hopeful.
No, well, in that case, then I'd like to request that he was to ask them if it was going to be, because I mean, hopeful. Surely we want something a little bit more, given that we've waited so long for so many traffic reports.
I am happy to ask them, Mr Mayor, and I can think that their answer will be yes, they will meet it if they get
if you just ask them and just
Main
report
Roads
back,
by
it'd be great.
April 2022.
Yeah, if you could just request and report back. Thanks for
Councillor
that.
Bowman, you are next.
Mr Mayor, is it good governance whether I agree with this extension or not to make a decision before I get traffic modelling?
Well, Well, only you can determine in your own mind whether it's good governance or not, Councillor Kiley. We'll deal with the motion next week. I don't want to enter debate.
Okay. So let me rephrase it. The question: as a councillor, have I got all the information in front of me to make an informed decision?
Well, we'll debate that next week, Councillor Bowman. I've got my personal views on it, but I don't want to enter into any sort of...
I'm trying to get advice from the manager of governance, a governance question.
Oh, I thought you were asking me.
No, I wasn't asking. I was asking through you as per our standing orders.
Thank you. Ms Albrecht, can you answer the question?
Through you, Mr Mayor. City officers believe it would be difficult for council to make a decision, an informed decision on this matter without the information that was intended to be included in future briefings, but it is up to councillors to decide.
Thank you. Councillor Parry, you are next.
Just a question, Ms Leahy, if that's okay. If we were not to move forward with Henley Brook Ave, how much funds would need to go back from the DCP to the developers?
Ms Late.
I'll take that on notice, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kiley.
Following on from Councillor Parry's, Mayor, how much contribution is expected from the ratepayers of the City of Swan to add to the DCP contributions to complete the road? That's the first question. If I can get an answer to that one first, thank you.
Ms Leahy.
I'll have to take that on notice as well, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Howlett, you're next.
Well, I've just got a
follow-up question.
Follow-up. Would the DCP cover the construction of the road completely, or would ratepayers be having to contribute as well?
Mr Mayor, there will be a city contribution.
Thank you.
The question is, I'm not too sure how to handle this, Mayor. We had a confidential presentation from Eastlink last Wednesday. Maybe I can ask through you whether Eastlink were proceeding on the flyover road from West Swan Road over Reed Highway with the understanding that they would be designing it for a Henley Brook Avenue extension or not. Whether if you get my, I can't reveal. So I'm asking for advice on how to reveal the answer there. That question was asked, but through you, I'll seek your advice.
Mr Coaten, or if you want to take it on notice and get back to Councillor Kiley. I just don't want to enter anything that was discussed behind closed doors in an open forum. Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. So, just hearing the deputations tonight, my question is to staff. This sort of it dates back to the 1990s. The planning for this road. It was endorsed on the MRS as part of the MRS in 2009. This motion on March the 17th, 2021, came about before the Swan Valley Planning Act took effect, which was in August 2021. So when we go to the Minister, what has more weight, the Swan Valley Planning Act or the Metropolitan Regional Scheme? Is there an answer to that?
Well, it'd be a decision for the Minister to make because they're both under her portfolios. Any other questions? Councillor Kiley. You'll be next, Councillor Johnson.
Mayor, going back to the original motion of March last year, point 3 was upon receiving advice from the Minister's office. Can I ask if any advice has been received from the Minister's office whatsoever in relation to Henley Brook Avenue extension?
Anyone aware, Mr Coaten?
We haven't had a response to that specific question. No, there has been a number of meetings and discussions and things like that, but the Minister hasn't made a decision on it, as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
I was going to ask that question, but if we go back to 2 immediately above 3, it says, towards the end of it says, with regard to the future of Henley Brook Avenue, including any alternative alignments. I mean, has any information been provided about alternative alignments? I guess the answer is no.
I believe Mr Coaten shaking his head.
Yeah, that's what I expect.
He just answered the question.
Next question is, it says here that as a result, West Swan, I'm looking at page 985 in the middle, councillors. As a result, West Swan Road will still be subject to the safety risks of having a mixture of distributor and destination. traffic, and I think elsewhere it talks about upgrading, the need for upgrading and widening West Swan Road in the future. So if we don't have Henley Brook Avenue, we're going to have to widen West Swan Road, our Tweed country road. Is that correct? Through you, Mr Mayor.
Mr Coaten.
Well, that would be a decision of council at the time. That statement is in relation to Henley Brook Avenue would take a lot of the through traffic off West Swan Road that currently goes along West Swan Road without actually, not tourist traffic, so the traffic that's going north to south would use Henley Brook Avenue rather than West Swan Road. So if Henley Brook Avenue isn't built, then the traffic volumes would stay and continue to increase on West Swan Road, and there are quite a few safety issues with that, so council would have to make some decisions around how they wanted to manage that.
I guess there's the broader question as to, without seeing some maps and diagrams and traffic modelling studies and alternative options, how can we make a decision on this? Is really
well, that's what Councillor Bowman asked earlier on. We're due to get a briefing. We're just waiting on the traffic modelling to come back from Main Roads Department. Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you. We'll move on to the next item, C1.4, Alignment of Workshops Avenue. It's on page 986, and I have Dr. Miralina Stempfel. Thank you, Dr. Stempfel. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so very much, everybody. I'm here as a speaker for the Helena River Alliance today. Nice to see you all again. So, I have a question for you. It's a bit off the cuff, but here it goes. Why do you know why memos...
Sorry, if you can just wait on. We've got one councillor out of the chamber because he had an interest. We'll just wait for him to return.
Yeah, I was all ready to go.
Lucky him. No, if you can just please wait, and I'll start the timer again. Thank you, Marilena. When you're ready.
I'm ready now. So, the question is, do you know why memos are the most successful order on earth? It's because memos have perfected the art of learning from past and adapt to make the next outcome better. I wonder if the City of Swan will ever learn from past experiences to improve the future outcomes and do better. And from what I learned tonight and here in all the other deputations, I have my serious doubts. It sounds like also the last 6 months of discussions around the failures associated with the planning of the Lloyd Street Bridge never happened, as we read the response of the staff from about Councillor Kiley's motion. The officer said, and I paraphrase here a bit, to facilitate an alternative alignment, we have to get new approvals and designs. This process are estimated to take in excess of 24 months to complete. In another associated motion put forward by Councillor Johnson, discussed in May 2021 in relation to the Workshop Avenue and the toxic stockpile on Lot 792, the officer stated, "It is planned that this material is encapsulated on the proposed Workshop Avenue alignment. If the material was to be removed now, the city would be required to import virgin material to Workshop Avenue, and at an approximate cost of $1 million. You guys really have to be kidding. The disregards of the environment, heritage, and the Helena River just keeps on giving. Let's unpack this and get the story a bit straighter. The Workshop Avenue has been planned for a long time, we are told, and it is claimed that is required to ease congestion at the Clayton Lloyd Street. And boy, don't you need a solution for that crossing. I put through an FOI with the main roads. I got the report by Jacobs 2017. I read it. And the report clearly states that the Clayton-Lloyd Street Bridge intersection is a fail, with over 260 meters of queue by 2031, which was modeled with the Workshop Avenue included. This bridge will not relieve the traffic. The Workshop Avenue will not relieve traffic at that intersection. So why do you build a road that does not solve your problem? It's a waste of public money, if you ask me. If you really need Workshop Avenue, maybe you have other alignments that could proceed and spare another 3 hectares of the Helena River floodplain from being infilled. And you also state that it will take 2 years to obtain a redesign, and that's the reason why you shouldn't go for a redesign. Well, guess what? You do have more than 2 years to redesign that road, because Main Roads gave me their schedule, and it says that the bridge will not be ready within 2 years. And that schedule was put together even before taking into account the potential delays associated with the federal probe into the Loy Street Bridge, which will commence soon. This means that you truly have a lot of time in your hands if you want to do a good job at Workshop Avenue. The alignment might even change for the bridge, and so you need to be ready for alternatives if you want that road. It is also stated in some of the response from the staff that the current alignment of Workshop Avenue has been endorsed through the Development WA Master Plan. And my question here for you is, who else endorsed it? Did the traditional owners? Did the community? Remember that the City of Swan will have to consult and get endorsement from the TOs to build that road and infill, because that is within a registered site, which is within the Helena River, and there is actually a spot right in there, which is associated with the camp where they used to camp. So it's definitely, it will require consultation and approval. And do you really trust Main Roads to conduct consultation on your behalf, given the botched consultation that attracted intervention under Section 10 of the Federal Aboriginal Act? And just a little one here. If you don't think for a moment that you will be able to spread the toxic waste that is now in the stockpile across natural ground. If that material,
1 minute left, thank you.
Yeah, if that material is not acceptable as an infill for the embankment of the Loy Street Bridge, I can guarantee you it will not be acceptable for that infill, because it will go on natural ground. What happens when the stockpile is removed is that you can remediate that location, encapsulate the soil that is contaminated under it, pave it, and you can have your extra land for whatever needs you have. There is no need to infill another 3 hectares. You can find a better alignment. There are lots of options when you start to look into that. So just, also those big trees that are around the proposed infill are an actual habitat for cockatoos and quenda, and they do move around a bit, with their little legs. They are not just locked in a spot. And I read this in this very big report. So if you want to read it, you will learn the same thing too. So please, let's not repeat the mistakes of the Loy Street Bridge and all the other issues associated with traffic and roads that we heard here today. Let's have a good look at alternative options and alternative scenarios. Let's assess if there are better and viable options out there. We know that we will have congestion at that crossing the Clayton Street and Loy Street Bridge. And is this little road really going to solve your problem at that intersection? And where is all the traffic going to go? It's going to go on the other side of Clayton Road, and probably is going to be another issue there as well.
Thank you, Dr. Stempfel.
I'm done. One last sentence. Can I read it?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So what I'm asking you tonight is to support the motion, and please, let's start to do things right from the beginning, and let's give the Helena River, the environment and heritage a small win for a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, I thank you for your attendance and your deputation. Mr. Considine, I was told that you didn't want to speak.
No,
is that
I'm
still...
not this evening,
Sorry?
No, I'm not speaking.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to confirm. Councillors, that completes all the deputation, so we now move on to item 6.3. Any other questions regarding other items, councillors? Councillor Bowman first.
I was still on to C1.4, if I can ask some questions of staff.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Have I got pages missing in my agenda, or is that it, the report, finishing at 987?
Yeah, that's the officer comment, up to page 987,
Okay.
yes.
When will I be getting further information so I can make a fully informed decision?
Well, the intention is that a briefing come back to council on Workshops Avenue, including the issues regarding the traffic modelling, the environmental impacts, the heritage assessment, the design and costings, Aboriginal heritage assessment, design and costings, for Workshops Avenue, along with 2 other projects that are part of that the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority are handing over to us, including a playground and a drainage upgrade in the area. So we don't have an exact time of that. Likewise, we are waiting on traffic modelling is one of the things that's holding us up there, but there are also a lot of other information we have to collect as well. So it is intended that a lot more information will come back at the briefing.
So Mr Mayor, question through you to the Manager of Governance. From a governance point of view, obviously the notice of motion is asking us to do something. Sounds like we're waiting for more information. As a councillor, if I don't have all the information, what am I supposed to do when making a decision? Do I not vote? Do I flip a coin? Or do I stay with the status quo? What is the advice there?
If you can answer it, Ms Ulrich, but that's your decision ultimately, Councillor Bowman.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the CEO has previously given advice to Council that when notices of motion of this nature are coming before the Council, it would be our preference for councillors to seek a report, a full officer report on the matter so that all of that information can be included. The time allowed for notices of motion only allows a limited response in terms of an officer comment.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
It says in the motion, stop all works relating to the construction of Workshops Avenue. Are we actually doing anything? The report implies that we're not.
Mr Coaten?
Only traffic modelling and collecting the information on the heritage assessments and the environmental impacts and things like that. So we're not actually doing any physical work on the ground.
So we can't actually stop works and put an immediate halt to any further depositing of soil. So we're not actually doing depositing of soil.
No, there's no depositing of soil occurring.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley?
Just in regard to the depositing of soil, there's a number of piles of soil that are on the alignment. Where did they come from then?
I'd probably have to, through you, Mr Mayor, I might catch up with Councillor Kiley afterwards to find out which specific areas he's talking about.
Any other questions on this item, councillors? No? Then any other questions in regard to other items before I work through the worksheet and see if there's any other alternative motions or amendments? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thanks. I've got a question in relation to the heritage survey, the review of the heritage survey. I think the City of Swans one, I gather. When is that going to be started, and when do you aim to have that finished by?
So the broader heritage survey is planned to commence in the next financial year. So it's on our business plan to start in the 22-23 business financial year, and we expect that to run over 2 years at least.
2 years.
2 financial years.
So it won't be
we'll
ready.
Start in the next financial year, and it will run into the.
When do you think it'll be ready for?
It will. The commencement of that study will be determined by when we get the finalisation on the Guildford policy. So when the Guildford policy is finalised, our work on the survey can start, and I expect that to be somewhere in the next financial year.
Okay. And how long do you think it's going to take to get it finished? Ready for to come back to council, that survey and the work?
It will run over 2 financial years,
Yep.
so a year to 18 months.
Okay.
Plus
so
minus
next
18
year's
months to complete.
23. So you're talking about 25?
Yeah.
Or 24?
24, 25.
Yeah, 24, 25, so by the end 24.
All right, thanks.
Councillor Henderson.
Question on 412, if I can, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Mr Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if the council's mindful or would like to have some sort of briefing on that, that could probably be arranged. Look, what I might envisage is that we're obviously going through the process of doing a scheme review. So as part of the scheme review, it can be a review of the provisions in relation to the vines, noting that there is, as this application identifies, there is a bit of a potential conflict between some of the objectives here in the vines for vegetation retention and some of the needs for, in the ordinary sense, for bushfire mitigation. So we can do it whichever way that the council pleases. If it wants to get more information on this, it can be through a briefing or something, I suppose.
Mr Mayor, because of the conflict and because the vines is quite large and got a lot of bush land in it, I do believe that we do need to do this. So it's a request from me that we have some path forward to be able to deal with the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, in view of the time, what I propose to do is start at the beginning of the matrix on item 13.7, read down by item number rather than reading the whole heading of the subject out to save time. And if you have any notices or amendments or alternative motions, if you could raise your hand so we can get those recorded. So, item 13.7. Councillor Johnson. Do you know what you want to do, Councillor Johnson?
Yes, but I can't remember.
Okay. 13.8, Councillor Henderson's already withdrawn that one. Is that just for questions, Councillor Henderson, or...? Yeah, 13.9, provision of place space. Councillor Bowman and Catalano have both withdrawn that one. So 13.10, Councillor Henderson, I think you're moving a deferral on that one. 13.11, Councillor Bowman, you've withdrawn that one. Item 13.12, any questions on that? 13.13, 13.14, 3.1, 4.1, and you know what you're going to do, Councillor? So you're going to move refusal?
Yes.
And 4.2. Item 4.3, Councillor Zanino. And you know what you're doing, Councillor Zanino?
I need to speak to
staff.
Excuse me, Mayor, I've got to go pick up my son.
Thank you, Councillor Kiley. Item 4.4, Councillor Howlett. You know what you wish to do?
Looking at a structure plan.
Thank you. Can I suggest just speak to planning staff? Item 4.5, Councillor Congadin. And Councillor Bowman's already down for that as well.
We'll have a chat, Councillor.
That's always good. Item 4.6. Item 4.7.
I'll move it to deferment if necessary, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Parry.
Subject to staff.
Yep. Item 4.8. Councillor Zanino. You know what you want to do, Councillor Zanino? Yep. You want to share? Do you want to share with the rest of us, or?
You sharing?
Thank you. Item 4.9. Item 4.10. Item 4.11. Item 4.12. 4.11. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You know what you're doing. Okay, I did wait for a couple of seconds on 4-9, but I didn't see your hand go up, so...
I'll withdraw that one as well, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Now, 4-12, did we do that one? You had some questions on that, Councillor Henderson. Okay, 4-13. Councillor Hallett, you know what you want to do?
Yeah, no, sorry.
4-14.
There were some issues to do with the boundary.
Questions about the leach drain, which...
And the leach drains are definitely outside the boundary.
Well, Mr Russell and Mr Van der Linden will confirm the details. Item 4-15. You want to approve it? Councillor Knight. Item 4-16. Item 5.1.
I'll make an amendment, Mr Mayor. Thank
Amendment
you.
by Councillor Parry. Item 5.2. Item 5.3. Item 5.4.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I'd like to withdraw that, thanks.
And you know what you want to do, Councillor?
Don't refuse it. And the same for 5.5 too.
Item 5.6. Item 5.7.
I'm going to withdraw. It depends on what information I get from Mr. Cohen about previous costs associated with that funding.
You're talking about 5.7?
Yes. Like just
Thank you. Item 5.8.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'll withdraw that. Be an alternate motion to include community consultation about the Safe Streets program.
Thank you. 6.
Mr Mayor, just on 5.7, depending on Cavallo's I'll be putting up for a different person to deliver the service.
Thank you. Or perhaps if you talk together.
But that's, yeah, if you want to, I'll give you my information and you can, I'll have the others, once I've seen the information, I'll give you say and we can move on that one.
Thank you. And then Councillor Henderson will take priority as the ward councillor.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Item 6.1. Item 6.2.
Oh, sorry. Is this just the council code? No, financial report. I wanted to
Item 6.3.
Oh, sorry, this is the one. Is that 6.2? 6.2, is that this one? Financial management report?
Yes.
I'd like to ask a few questions, if you don't mind, just quickly. So on page 2 of 3, I'm just curious about why so few street trees, the money for street trees hasn't been spent, like this Park Street Trees Residential 70.
Councillor Keller, can I ask you to follow up in the morning? We did have a time earlier on to ask any questions about any items, and now we're working through.
Okay, but
as long as you have the information before next Wednesday, if you want.
Okay. Well, then, can you just withdraw that one then, pending that information? Thank you.
Thank you. And you follow up with Ms. Lay tomorrow. Thank you. Item 6.3. Item 6.4. Item 7.1. Councillor Bowman's withdrawn that. Item 7.2.
Mr Mayor, I'll be making amendments to all the AME from 7.2 down to 7.9. All amendments, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on those? Item
7.7, Tui Gardens.
7.9 and 7.8.
Well,
sorry,
Councillor Parry indicated 7.2 to 7.9.
to 7.3. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. My apologies. All AE. Oh, sorry, I did misread it. My apologies. All annual meeting of electors motions.
Okay, so Councillor Johnson, you wanted Toohey Gardens. Councillor Catalano, you mentioned one.
Yes, the 7.9.
Thank you.
Sorry, can we just confirm that Councillor Catalano, did you want 7.8 as well?
No.
Okay. 7.9. 7.10. 7.11. I know you've drawn them all. I'm just giving the opportunity because if Ward Councillor 7.12. 7.13. 8.1. I don't know. What do you want to do?
I want to request an updated traffic report. It's for 2021 one. There is a traffic report 2021 that I would like to request.
Oh, we can do that either through Mr. Coates tomorrow or next week at the meeting. Okay, item C 1.1, C 1.2, C. Yes, 1.2 is Councillor Bowman, got an amendment. C 1.3, it's been Councillor Kiley's motion, Councillor Kiley on C 1.4. Okay, confidential matters, C 3.1, Councillor Bowman, and I think Councillor Howard declared an interest on that item. C 3.2.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll be deferring that for clarification of the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. C 3.3. C 3. Councillor Catalano. Do you know what you wish to do with those two? C 3.5 and C 3.6. Councillors, unless anyone's got anything, you can ask a question.
If the meeting goes over next week, which no doubt it's going to, what's the next date for what's the meeting, when's the meeting going to spill over to? Because I'd like to organise my week next week.
Yes, in consultation with the Deputy Mayor, staff and some other councillors. If the meeting doesn't finish at a reasonable time after 10 o'clock next week, we'll try and finish at 10 or as close to it afterward. We'll be restarting the adjourned meeting at the next Wednesday instead of the briefing. And the briefing sessions, if they need to be had, can be rescheduled to another night. But it's very hard because other councillors have got other commitments on other nights. But we've all got the one commitment to be in this chamber every Wednesday night. So it'll be on a Wednesday for continuity, for consistency.
Question, Mr. Mayor, is that sustainable in the long term? Because in effect, the previous meeting is running over 3 meetings. We now have a very large agenda containing about a third of the previous meeting. So it appears to me it's likely to run, this meeting could potentially run for 3 or 4 meetings. So is there no reason why we cannot meet on Thursday the 7th?
I think there is a number of councillors who had other commitments that night.
Yeah.
But we want to get into having one night. Some people have suggested a Friday night. Some people have suggested a Monday night when the public holidays sometime occur on Fridays and Mondays. So if we stick to the Wednesday, everyone will know when it is.
Mr. Mayor, we just pointed out it's not sustainable because we now appear to need 3 meetings.
It's a different subject, Councillor Johnson, as to what night we're going to meet to continue, as to the sustainability, and that's up to councillors in a lot of instances.
Well, that's what's being raised right now. So what we need to do is to recognise that we cannot just chew up every briefing night, because we'll have no briefings. So we need to come up with an alternative night. So what's wrong with Monday the 11th? Council workshop. 12th.
If we make Wednesdays for council meetings, councillor, we can fit in briefing sessions on other nights. Sometimes we don't get all councillors to the briefings, but we should have all councillors to ordinary council meetings.
So the expectation is that we could anticipate in a 1 month cycle we would get 3 Wednesdays of council meetings.
That's up to this council, Councillor Johnson. If you want, every councillor wants to debate for their full time, then I can't avoid that. It's up to council. Councillor Parry.
Mr Mayor, I wish to probably move Amendment 2 to limit debate to 3 minutes due to the enormity of the debates. Next.
Well, that's up to council to decide next week. And
I wish to raise that first in the items, if you don't mind, Mr Mayor. I think it's a worthwhile discussion to be had.
Get in first and put it, and the council can decide.
Mr Mayor, sorry, if I can also add that following week there are 2 briefings. The Monday night is already taken, budget, and also that Wednesday night is business planning and budget, which flows into the budget schedule. So it's actually going to be critical that if we do go to the Wednesday night for a council meeting, that we have to reschedule that briefing very quickly.
At this point, Mr Mayor, we need to notify there's a risk here. There's a risk that the council isn't able to conclude its business. So that needs to be addressed quite seriously. So I suggest that you take that up with the CEO. We need to have an effective...
A number of councillors have raised the same issue, councillor, until it's in our meeting procedures, in our local laws, to limit the minutes of debate, and even tonight with people making deputations. At the moment, I've got to abide by the current rules and regulations unless council determines otherwise. On that note, I thank you all for your attendance and officially close the meeting at 9.